And how do we make cuts that make sense as we're going through the process, which Joy and I have already begun. Last year, we did cut teaching staff in the middle school through retirement. And so that process, even though it's behind the scenes, those conversations have been happening for over 3 years for us, and we have a way to reduce our budget at the middle school without negatively impacting the programming and all the things that we as a committee and we over the past 4 or 5 years have implemented at the middle school. I mean, we've increased our electives. Students have choices now that they never had before. Joy and I started working on that 4 or 5 years ago. And technology electives, Project Lead the Way electives, our music electives have expanded. So the rigor and the things that we've really come to love about our middle school, along with our small learning communities and teaming, are very, very important. It's always the primary conversation. So, so I just want you to know that it's something that we've been working on for multiple years now, and we do have a couple of things that we put together on how we could reduce based on these numbers. And we'll be talking about that as we go through the budget, which doesn't all of a sudden overreact either. It's really just a response to what we're seeing and how do we continue to serve our students the best possible way and still be fiscally responsible to the towns and that. And so we'll be talking through that this year. And like I said, it's something that we've been in constant conversations about.
And at the high school, we've actually been operating at over capacity. And
True.
So for the last 12 to 14 years,
can't
we've
get
lost
lockers.
9 teaching positions through
Right.
attrition and retirements. Our building is designed for 1,040 students. So we're still over that number. So we're actually
Kind of right there.
leveling off.
Yeah.
And we're, I think, more appropriately where we should be, or at least where our building was planned for when it was designed.
1,040?
Yep, in terms of classroom space and sizing, that's what our building is designed for. So we've been, we've seen the big classes, and so now we're starting to see maybe an average class size.
Yeah, right.
They're not small yet.
Yeah.
But there's also a difference between space capacity and teaching capacity, right? And I assume that's great that the school's coming closer to space capacity, but you have a lot of teaching capacity.
Well, I would say that our teachers instead of having a class of over 30, now their class is maybe 27,
Yeah, I did saw that in the data.
Yeah.
Yeah. Those
So-
class sizes at the high
There's-
school are much more
there's-
reasonable.
yeah.
They were frightening for a while. And we had a lot of study halls too, both of which we've been trying to really get back under control. Not good to offer students those. So this is the front side. On the back side is the piece that has the big budget implications for the towns, and this is what the towns will be particularly interested in. So if you have not seen this before, and everyone here has seen this before, so I'm not going to go too slow here, because it is getting late, and I know everybody's probably tired. So the top row is the difference in the amount of each town between the Union and Silver Lake. And the Union, again, is this elementary students, okay, from the towns. Okay, so for the Union in Halifax, for instance, there's 608 in 2018, it was 597 in 2017, just so you can see the column I'm going across. You have this, right?
I do.
Okay.
I've already looked at it.
Okay, that's what I thought. So these numbers give you the percentage that they will be paying into the budgets, okay, just so you sort of have an understanding of it. The middle of the chart is the assessment, and these are the numbers that will really matter to the towns. Okay, actually, in retrospect, they probably should be large and in charge, because that's really what the towns are looking for. So in 2019, which is this current fiscal year, Halifax, for instance, was 32% of the Silver Lake budget. Next year, the year we'll be building the budget, FY20, it is 31.4%. Halifax will be happy. They will be seeing a decrease in their percentage of students that they will have to pay for.
Which goes right over to Kingston.
Right, which then goes over to our friends in Kingston, who were 55.7%, and next year will be 56.3%. And you may remember last month, our last school committee meeting, we talked about having gone to the financial meeting in Kingston where they were saying that basically the town of Kingston will be struggling this year, and that they're really hoping that we'll be able to come up with a fiscally responsible budget, and they are saying level funded, but I mean, they definitely were indicating it will be a difficult year for Kingston, which will be a problem for us because they're the largest percentage of our budget.
I just said it's shocking, we've never heard that.
I know, every year. Plimpton stayed exactly the same.
What are you guys looking at me for?
Yeah, so Plimpton will be exactly the same. So again, these numbers will really impact the towns. These are the numbers that the towns will really be looking for. in
And
terms of the effect of-
I'm trying to wrap my head around how the percentages relate to what's on this side. So like, we don't know how many kids will be in kindergarten in 2 years. So how do those percentages get figured out? Based on what numbers?
Based on,
Based on these
Based on the numbers that are
Numbers.
above. So for instance, for the assessment, we're figuring out the assessment percentage for 2020, but it's based on this October 1, 2018.
Okay.
Yep.
And we also have
These
to wait.
columns stay.
Okay. So
the
it's
dip-
not based on what we're gonna have
No,
then?
it's
No.
based on what we know to
now.
be true right now.
Yep.
And don't we also have to wait for this to be codified by the Department of Revenue on their preliminary cherry sheet, or is this the
No,
number
not
we
yet,
go
no.
with? This is it.
This is
These are our
it.
numbers.
So this doesn't change now?
No, this is it.
But the one thing that you can look to forecast is next year's grade 6 versus this year's grade 12.
Exactly.
So you're going to see that
Ah,
Halifax
right,
drops
right.
the following year, Kingston goes up 15 students, and Plimpton drops by 14
For Silver Lake, we
students.
can do it, it's harder for
The elementary.
for the
The
elementaries.
elementaries, yeah.
You can kind of predict it for the next
Right.
few years by looking at this.
Right.
Yeah, and people in the finance.
The way the elementary
Right, the
committees
finance
do
committee
it.
might have charted them out for the next 25 years.
I know for at least in a small town like Plimpton, it's, our school secretaries are reaching out to the families saying, do you know any kids who might be coming
Yeah.
in next year?
Yeah.
Because one household can make a difference.
We get some rough numbers. That's how we predict it. It's
Yeah.
the best way we have.
Sure, well,
Yeah.
just, you know, it's.
Twins,
you look
awesome.
at it,
Yay, triplets!
you know, it's a 10% increase.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Just a little bit.
Oh, yeah, no, it's amazing the amount of impact it has. I mean, that's part of the problem. In Plimpton is one student is like, what?
0.5%.
I was gonna say, you
We're
say
at
0.5%. You're 0.5% now. It's gonna,
And
kind of
there
was
are a lot of
30% last
homes
I
being
had
built in
looked.
Kingston, so
Yeah.
those
Two
could
new
have
neighborhoods
high school
going
Yes,
Sure.
yeah,
There's 3 new neighborhoods in Kingston.
Yeah.
yeah.
They just
Yeah.
cleared a bunch off of,
There's one coming up off of.
So we're hoping
Old
some of these
Idea
new,
Run.
no.
Yeah.
So,
There's one that's
the
in
shared
the
cost
Deer Run right off of
percentages,
that.
again, the shared cost percentages are the numbers from the
And then there's
union,
another one
from the elementary schools, and it's what pays for my office. So it's, you know, these
I know.
3 lovely people's salaries, among other things, in my wonderful building over there. So Halifax had a slight increase, 0.2%. Kingston had a 0.3%, and Plimpton had a decrease of 0.5. So these numbers are numbers that will really matter to the towns. This will be a big impact in terms of how they feel about the budget. You know, when they get a huge increase in their assessments, and then they see the budget increase, it really can have an impact. If their percentage is decreased, an impact of an increase in the budget is not as difficult for them. So these numbers really matter to the towns. And to Gordon's point, my guess is most of the towns already know these numbers before we give them to them.
Well, I mean, so what I did on the finance committee is I took the current year's budget that you have, that we're in, and just took the difference to see what keeping a level funded budget would mean to that town's budget.
Right.
So it's, the differential for Halifax is going to be around $80,000 that Kingston's going to be picking up without the budget going up,
Right. Before we do anything.
before we do anything.
Right.
And we know the number just for salary lines and benefits is going to be at least $600,000 to $700,000.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you can multiply that out to figure out what we're looking at for just a minimum to keep the baseline that's here.
And then the impact of any change in state aid.
Yes.
That's another big factor.
Right, yeah, and again, nothing we can control. We can't control enrollment, we can't control state aid.
Right.
So. Did anybody have any other questions on this? Again, when I put the budget book together, which you'll be getting in January, this will be a part of the budget book. I'll be doing some different graphs that sort of show the differences over time. I think most of us, well, I'm visual. And I think it's just a graph sort of gives you a good sense of it. I'll also be charting out the information on homeschool students, some of the different programs where our vocational students are going to, private school attendance, and some different ways so you can see the data from all over. So this is more to come. The last thing I have is just on the budget, and it's the timeline. I just wanted to very quickly go over that with you. So right now, we are beginning conversations on budgets, and it looks like this one.
I'll find it.
Okay.
Share with me.
I don't know. Things got eaten.
Jim will share.
We need Lisa. We're doing the best we can here. We are beginning the process with the administrators. The administrators will be turning in their budgets to me by Thanksgiving, and Christine, and then we'll begin to have our more formal meetings going through the budget, helping to understand what it is that they need, why they need it, and then what needs to be brought forward to the committee. We have already begun some initial, as Jim mentioned, we've already begun looking at some different options and what some of these numbers will mean for us. Next month, in the next school committee meeting, Marie Grable will be coming, and she'll be doing a presentation on special education, and she'll be doing, the whole slideshow, which I think everybody finds pretty informative. I also asked Steve Pello to come and talk about technology, so at the next meeting, that will be a good opportunity for you to hear about those two areas. And then I'm going to ask you to think about what it is you want us to focus on as a district. What is it that you want me to make sure that we're including in the budget? We can begin the conversation now, or, you can begin to think about it and, over the next couple meetings, let us know. In January, I will be bringing forward the first draft of our budget. Again, the House one comes out the fourth Wednesday of the month. Fourth Wednesday of January, which will be when some real numbers become available, and we'll have some information to really work with. The budget process takes a huge amount of time, and we all take it very seriously. But again, we still want to make sure we're running great schools. So it's a bit of a juggling act right now. But luckily, we all like each other, and we spend a lot of time together going through this. So it works out okay. Again, I want to make sure you know that we're going to work really hard to bring forward a good budget. My priority is always to give the students what they need, and that's the budget that I plan to bring forward. I'm well aware of the town's financial restrictions. I feel like we've been very fiscally responsible with budgets. I've worked really hard to establish good relationships with the towns. I feel like the towns trust us. They get all the information you get. There isn't any sense of hiding anymore that you have to beg to get your forms from the towns. They get their own book with the pretty pictures. So I've already started all those things. So I will continue to do that. But if there's information that you want to make sure that's in the budget book, or if there's information that you want to make sure that we include as part of our budget building process, reach out to any of us sitting here. But we will go through the process as we have in the past. I think it's been a pretty thorough process.
I think you've done a great job with bringing the towns into the fold with our budgetary process, and it really started a couple of years ago, and I'd like to say that Paula did tremendous work building the relationships with the three towns, and it was because of all that groundwork that you laid and Paula laid that I felt comfortable taking this chairmanship of the committee, so I just wanted to acknowledge that as well.
The other thing that we'll do is we go back to a monthly schedule in January, once we're in budget season, and if, when we present the budget, you feel like we need to schedule some extra meetings, we can do that. So, those options are always available. And I think that is all I have.
Any questions for Joy? Gordon?
Just one thing that I think we should start to do in the budget is to include money for the capital plan. I'm not saying I know where that money's coming from, but I think we need to start to put money into the budget, more than just E&D, into maintaining the buildings on a going forward basis, because I don't think, looking at the number of items that we know that are coming up from the SAFER meeting,
safer.
that we're not going to be able to sustain the buildings with the money that's in E&D, and we're gonna have to either include that in the operating budget, or go to the towns and ask them to start to include money for the capital items that need to be included for fix.
And that's been brought up before. Mark Guidoboni was a pretty big proponent of that. My concern has been that knowing the towns are giving us a number that we have to hit, if we add the building maintenance into it and we're not funding from E&D, it will mean more cuts into our academic programs, into our teachers, impacting our students. So there's difficult decisions to make. We'll put the numbers together, you get to vote it, we don't. You know, I'm always, personally, the students will always be my priority, and my staff. The buildings, you know, we're going to maintain them to the best of our ability. And again, funding it through E&D, the towns, I think, have really appreciated, at least from conversations I've had, because it hasn't increased the budget. So, you know, it's trying to hit that balance point. I don't know what it is. I'll give you the numbers. You know, you guys get to vote.
But I'll just add to Gordon that you're coming at it from a different, probably, background on it, but I think we need to build the budget that we need to house our children in a place that's safe. So I know we're trying to meet a target that towns have given us, but we need to build a budget that is real, and if it doesn't hit the target, I mean, that's a different discussion.
And I think, kind of dovetailing from all of this, I think the discussion we had tonight in our SAFER committee meeting is sort of positioning the information for this sort of discussion. We've started to review the envelope evaluation that was done a couple of years ago, coupled with the capital plan, and administration is pulling together the information from the envelope study, what's been tackled for repairs and maintenance, what's still outstanding, add that onto the capital plan. And then I think, as we talked about tonight, we may need a broader discussion to bring forth to the three communities. These are your buildings. These are our buildings. This is what we are faced with. These are immediate needs. These are coming real soon needs, and these are things that can wait. We need that. We need all of that information. We need to put it in front of the three towns, and we need to agree how to begin tackling it. And if it's operating budget versus E&D, our maintenance issues aren't going away. So, but it's a broader discussion that has to be had.
Right, absolutely. On a more fun note, our goals program makes very snappy magnets. So I bought each of you a Respect the Lake magnet.
Thank you,
Put on by
Joy.
our goals program. They really did a nice job. So a new place to hold your refrigerator magnet with your calendar on it.
And if I can speak to the buttons real quick, it's our theme for the year.
Right.
And there's 3 waves for the 3 towns, which is something that Ms. Ferrera actually thought of.
Nice symbolism.
It is, absolutely, yeah. And then the last thing I have, and I'm just going to pass this around, you may remember we started a BRIGHT program, Bridge for Resilient Youth in Transition, this year. This is sort of just a magazine that I received in the mail, because now we have a BRIGHT program. It talks a little bit more about the program, and I know we presented it and you liked it, but this is something that I thought really just sort of summarizes a lot of what the options are and the impacts on the students. I only got one in the mail, but if you're interested, I just brought it with you to share.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good?
Yep,
Any
all set.
questions for our superintendent? All right, so we're moving on to new business, and under new business, we have school committee, student involvement. I'm gonna need you to hear me out on this one. Since I've been a member of the Silver Lake Regional School Committee, I think most of you have noticed that I put students first. I think about them at an individual level, not just as a collective. And having student representation and student input here at the school committee is something that we've done in a very informal manner at the beginning of some of our meetings from time to time. I would like to move forward with the inclusion of a student on the school committee. in a non-voting ex officio member status. I've spoken with Joy about this. We've spoken with Fred about this. We've spoken with Michaela about this. There's actually statute under Chapter 71, Section 38M, where students are supposed to be represented on their regional school committees. There's actually language of how those students would be appointed by their peers. And what I'm looking for tonight is some open-minded discussion and potentially some authority given to you, onto me, to work with Michaela and the advisors to school committee to bring a student on board, to sit with us at the table as an additional member, just to allay any of your concerns. They're not privy to executive session. Again, they're a non-voting member, but they would be recognized to speak their mind at the meeting just like any of us would be. Our earlier meeting time seems to fit better with our student schedules, more respectful of their demands academically and club-wise, family-wise. But again, I really believe you can assume, you can think, you know exactly what the kids are looking for and what the kids want, but having a student here to speak for their peers is an invaluable resource.
So I would open up the conversation. I'm assuming you'd need a motion. So I'll make a motion that, to grant you the authority to work with Michaela on bringing on a student to the school committee.
Is there a second?
I would say.
Okay, discussion. Gordon?
Are you looking for rotational or just one student to be the whole
It's actually
year?
codified in Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 38M, that the student would be elected by their peers, and it would be a representative. There can be an alternative. I talked to Glenn Kuchar from MASE just last night about this. There is the ability for them to have an alternative member since they're non-voting to represent, but there would be one person, one high school student, and since they did not have the election in June, this is why I wanted to talk to you guys tonight about potentially seeing what we can do with the current student council, student government, to get someone involved as early as this year. Paul?
This is at regional schools only have this ability?
It's not only at regional schools.
It's not only regional?
In the statute itself, it does mention towns, municipalities, and regional schools.
What percentage of school committees do this now?
There's not a high level of school committees that do it, but there are handfuls of school committees throughout the Commonwealth that do. Cambridge, for instance, does have a student representative on their school committee. Mike?
So open to all grades? And
So again,
would it be a vote?
we didn't want to proceed too far down the pathway. We got clarification from Fred on the legalities of it. We looked up the state law and saw the statute. And we just began discussion with Michaela of how she felt about this. I didn't want to jump in without discussing it with the committee as a whole. So I don't know what grade level it comes from. I don't know exactly the mechanism we'd have to put forth. And I don't believe in overstepping my bounds of authority, so I didn't want to decide for Michaela how these things would happen. I didn't want to decide for the committee how this would happen, but it's quite clear that the statute exists, and from my own 2 cents, taking the chairman hat off for a minute, I believe morally that if that's there and we can have student input directly at our table, that we should avail ourselves of that opportunity. Eric and then Paul.
So my question, 2 questions. One for Michaela, is there any downside that you see? And the second question was, if you heard any downsides from your conversation last night to it, any negatives?
I don't see any negatives to it. You know, I think, our meetings are public meetings, so any of them could attend if they wanted to, and there's no conversations that we're having here that they wouldn't be permitted to hear, so I'm not worried from that standpoint. I think the benefits are twofold. It gives you the perspective of the student body, but I think it also exposes our students to the process of local government. And I think last spring into the summer and this fall with the lights was a great demonstration of that. And I think for me, it was encouraging to see our students get involved. And I think that would be a great opportunity for someone.
Paula?
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to phrase this the way I would if I had time to think about it, but we all are adults, and I'm not putting down any students. We come here with certain life experiences, financial experiences, work experiences, interaction skills that we bring to the table. The lights ended up being a positive experience because a lot of people came in and went above and beyond, and we had a positive outcome. In particular, my mind goes to the budget discussion. Every year it's been challenging, and every year we say it's going to be more challenging, and it has, anybody who's been on this committee. It is not going to get better. We're going to have very difficult discussions. A student is going to have a certain perspective, but they're not going to have the balance in a discussion like that we bring to the table. I'm wondering about the comfort level somebody would have.
So I would maybe liken it to our school council. So we have a representative from each grade who sits on that, a student representative. And one of the things we do discuss in that committee is school budget. That's where our handbook changes come from, our school improvement plan. And I think part of the process that we would have to discuss is that vetting process, and selecting that student, through an election process with their peers, who qualifies to run, is it open to everybody, is there a certain grade criteria? But I think through that process, from what we've seen in our experience with school council, the students who are interested, I think, come with a level of maturity and experience, or at least interest, that I think would bring something to the table, not take away from the discussions.
I think too, as a relatively new member of the committee, the first year I went through the budget process, I didn't, even though I have life experiences, it didn't really prepare me for that. And so the first year was really hard, and I questioned some of it, and then the next year it got a little bit easier and I understood the process more. And I think, with anyone, a student or an adult, that's part of the process. I think one of the challenges is presumably it would be someone different every year. So we wouldn't have that opportunity to have that, experience with the previous year's budget, for example, come into play. But, I think in the interest of education, having someone as part of the committee, and I hear Jason saying that that's part of why he feels strongly that we consider this, and I would agree with that.
So the only direct relation I have to this, Paula, to be honest with you, is I've been lucky enough to be on the leadership team of 4 different strategic plans at a district level. And every one of those plans has had student representatives creating a long-term 3 to 5 year strategic plan. In my first time in that room, and I saw these high school kids walk in, I didn't quite understand their involvement, why they were there. Would they be able to bring anything of value to the table? And every time I thought that I was advocating in the best interest of the student, I would catch myself listening sometimes to counterpoints to the things I was trying to advocate on behalf of the student. No, that's not what we need, this is what we need. And would make very salient points that would pull me their way, or maybe not, but a very valid, respectable position that, was determining where the district was going to be going for the next 3 to 5 years. They were invaluable assets. And it eventually got to the point that the adults in the room, 25 stakeholders from a variety of positions, were turning to these 2 high school kids and saying, what do you guys think? Are we making sense at this point? Wasn't on every single decision, but having them in the room for those questions that we needed to have answered was priceless.
So I guess I see both sides of it. I mean, having sat on a school council that didn't have students on it, just probably mostly for maturity level, to be honest, right?
Correct.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of data, so.
It is.
And then sitting on one for a year with, or a couple of years with students on it, I feel their input is just, it's just a whole different perspective that you don't get unless you're walking the halls often, which I don't. And I know that Kayla does and Jim does, but I don't. So, we just, Laura and I would just be sitting here staring at data, and even get lost in the data, I think, like you, to your point, it doesn't, you have to remember it's each individual student that you're here for, and not just one kind or one group, whatever. I do feel, though, that in Michaela's case, on your school council, you get that student input and you hear it and you do a great job of wrapping that all up and kind of conveying it in the discussions here in a lot of ways, and I think that's great. So part of me wonders if it's sort of necessary, because I feel like it is sort of, for lack of a better word, sort of representative government in some respects, because you hear it. But it would be great to have a student here. I do wonder about this sort of year-to-year revolving situation, but I also think that there is already a logical student in the class, not a particular person, but a position that has grown through a level of increasing responsibility over the years that would be, and elected by their peers already, that would be the ideal candidate, and it would be the student body president. Or the student council president.
And that seems to be how the statute's written, because it says ex officio, which means they'd be here as part of their other office, right? An ex officio non-voting member. And I mean, it is codified in MGL. So to a certain extent, we're behind the times with not having a student representative here. And most of the state might also be behind the times. We have the decision of how we'd like to proceed on that.
I do think, though, that that particular position does get a lot of input and a lot of exposure to a lot of adult conversations and a lot of budget restrictions and planning and all the things that I think that would be good qualifications for conveying information. I would just like to see it be sort of a popularity contest, because that just, it needs to be someone, to your point, Paula, that, has a different sort of life experience, but has one that's sort of matured over the time in their school. And I guess I don't feel like I'm quite comfortable to vote on it yet, because I need to process it a little bit, but I think that it's a really interesting idea, and I think it would benefit us.
And I did just want to mention, as you know, when we're at the high school, we more often than not have a student who comes in who does do a bit of a presentation on some of the activities and things that are happening. We've just never had a formal member, which is more what Jason is recommending. We have had, we often have middle school presentations on things that are happening. It's a different way of hearing from the students, but it is a voice that we do hear from the students. But this, what Jason's talking about is someone who actually would have a seat at the table, literally.
And I wouldn't like to see those presentations stop, because I think you get different slices of life that maybe I don't have the experience in, because I didn't have a kid who went through that particular type of program or whatever. So I'd like to see those continue, but I think there's a logical office holder that would make it, I think, more robust immediately.
Good.
I'd be wondering if you would look at it as a trial at first, and bring somebody in before we voted on that, to see what the input was like if we had the student come in and participate in a certain section of the meeting, to see how that flowed.
So
to get like a section of student input here on the agenda.
I'm not proposing we rush into this, but I wouldn't want to make a student feel like they were interviewing with us. I think the student could demonstrate that to Michaela and the advisors to student government at the high school level.
I guess I was more thinking on the lines of getting that input into the meeting, not so much trying out the particular student, but getting that input to flow in and seeing if the members thought it was a positive experience. I think getting to be a member of this committee is a big deal. And I think I'd like to see how that would work before we go and vote that position in, see if we could have, a trial of that or some sort of beginning.
Paula?
The only other comment I'll make, for what it's worth, is over time, I've seen various personality types on the committee. Sometimes this committee has been inviting to be on and to be part of. Other times it has not. You know, I just caution us that it's an adult environment here. And the students come in and give presentations and what have you, and I love them. But I can cite a number of times that I wouldn't have wanted a student to sit through an entire meeting because of the discussion, the temperament, et cetera, that's gone on. And they're young adults, I get that, but we're talking about bringing somebody on, a position on, and having it over time. We may have a cordial, well-connected committee right now. It has not always been the same, it will not always be the same.
That's a fair
I would
We
agree
have
with
some
that.
staff members who would not come and speak before this committee because of who's been on the committee before. That's how aggressive the personality types can be. I apologize, I'm factoring in a number of years of tenure, for what that's worth. I just had to get that out there. Appropriate or not, I apologize if it was not entirely
No,
appropriate.
I think, Paula, that your years of experience on this committee are invaluable to us considering the tenure, the average tenure of our membership right now.
Yeah, it's amazing how I have not aged.
You look exactly the same, Paul. Back
Over my tenure.
Yeah, back from when you were in Halifax Elementary
I know,
School.
shh. I was just a child.
I've been around a long time too, don't forget.
And
I know.
again, you know, as a counterpoint to that, and I know this would not dissuade all personalities, but I know that in certain company, we speak differently. And I know that wouldn't affect everybody's way that they would present themselves. Having a 17, 18-year-old senior representing their school in that capacity, I hope we would all remind ourselves of the company we were keeping at the table. And hopefully that would instill the civility level to continue in the current tenor that we're feeling right now. Leslie Ann.
Just if it's okay to add a counterpoint, I think Michaela can probably speak to this as well, but watching the tenor of some of the things that have happened in student council over the years, it's probably equally at times as difficult in terms of personalities, and you guys are laughing, but you know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? And they are sort of training to be future leaders, and they take that really seriously, but there's a lot of personality conflicts, there's a lot of struggles, there's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of cat herding. I think the person that Michaela and Jason and others might choose, I think, definitely comes from a background that has sat through a lot of that at a high school level, and I think they would be ready for the next level. And I don't think they would take it personally because they don't really know any of us. I think they would just give their honest opinion about things. I don't know how you feel, but I think I've seen it. It's not always pretty.
No, it's not.
So
Productive.
Productive, yes.
could I ask that you all take time between now and our December meeting to look at Chapter 71, Section 38M, and bring yourself into familiarity with the state law surrounding this conversation.
You got to quote that again, Jason, I'm sorry.
Chapter 71, Section 38M.
If anyone has trouble finding it, just shoot me a note and I'll send it to you.
I'm sure Celia can find it.
You all got the books?
Hey, it can open.
See, I'm the geek who reads it and highlights it. I was taught
Joe Shaves.
by Joe Chaves very well.
He actually had it memorized, God bless him.
So, if you're uncomfortable with Michaela and I having this conversation too far of an extent, could we at least maybe try and bring some clarity to who would be working with that student before bringing it to the student body and actually having someone show up here at one of the committee meetings?
So the motion, I think, was just for you to work with Michaela.
That's right.
In that direction, so I don't know that we need to change the motion.
I just wanted to reframe it.
Right.
Any further discussion or questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
I'm sorry, clarify the motion.
The motion is to allow me, as a representative of us, to to work with Michaela to try and establish some criteria of who the student might be, where the student would come out, how the student would be elected from the student body, to make sure we're in line with Mass General laws. And then we can come back to the table and discuss and potentially vote on how we want to handle that information at a future meeting.
That was so moved.
Right.
Okay.
We good?
Yep.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Against? Abstentions?
I'm abstaining right now.
Okay.
You too?
Abstain?
Who else
So
abstained?
Gordon abstained?
Gordon.
And Paul abstained. All right. Thank you very much. Moving on to old business. Would you like your principals to be able to go
Oh, yes. Actually,
get themselves together?
would anyone mind if Michaela and Jim got to go home?
But we are not naming the librarian.
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'd love to give them the night off. And then,
All right, thank you.
you know, and to be honest with you, if guidance was going to be a long one, would you mind if we let Kim talk also? Because I know they've been over there grading papers, having a wonderful time, but
Accept the motion to take our SLEA out of order, please.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
You have the floor.
Thank you. So there's new faces. I'm Kim Orcutt. I'm the SLEA president. I wasn't at the first meeting, and I feel like that was ages ago, so I do apologize that it's so late in the school year that I'm meeting your acquaintance, but everything at school is kind of in full gear. I always am amazed of how we can go from summer, relaxing, and then you just jump right back into it, and it's like a heartbeat. It happens so quickly. And the teachers at the schools are busy and happy to be back with the kids. We are working right now at the high school level. I can speak on behalf of the teachers who are working to help kids with recommendation letters. We are taking time to help edit college essays. We are constantly busy, but we are happy to be busy. One of the concerns that I've heard repeated from the membership, and I know that it was brought to your attention and I'm sure that you're aware of it, are the temperature concerns that we have in the classrooms. It's nice and cool now, but we came back to triple-digit classrooms. And it was a bit unbearable for students and for teachers in particular, because the kids got to move and maybe have the luck of the draw of an AC classroom and then got to go downstairs. But upstairs we had teachers, from 7 o'clock in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon in 100+ degree classrooms. We've collected temperatures for a year now, and we want to see some forward progress on the collection of data that we have. We know it's not a quick solution and it likely won't be easy, but we would like to start sitting down and working towards making it a safer environment for our students and staff. And that concern is in both buildings. And we had some coolness issues too, but we'll get the kinks out of the heating system. We're not too worried about that. It's really, and we tend to lose focus on it because it's only at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, but I can't let that fall off the plate this year. I think I dropped the ball on it last year for my members and they had to suffer the consequences this year, and I really need to make sure that I'm representing their needs this year. Aside from that, we have no concerns. We are happy to be working with our administration and with our students, and if you guys want to donate to breast cancer, feel free to swing by and put a little money in the boot. We are working really hard to bring in some cash for breast cancer awareness. It is actually happening at the middle school too. I saw it in the announcements, so you want to get involved. But that's it. Thank you so much for
Kim,
allowing us
just,
that. Yes.
I know you weren't here to hear
Yes.
our response to the concerns about the temperatures in the classroom, but we're equally as concerned about it. We realize that it's an uncomfortable and unsafe environment for the teachers to work in, and Harvard released a study saying that students working in overheated classrooms, it's effectively a non-day of school.
Yeah.
So we are aware of that, and we are looking forward to working
Yeah,
together
and
with
we
you.
know that it's not going to be, an overnight answer. So we're looking forward to doing whatever we can. I know for the new members, like, I try to be as hands-on as possible. So we'll get creative with you. We'll try and come up with ideas. Putting air conditioning in every classroom is not a feasible solution and not what we're looking for. We're looking for making the learning environment safer, which I think is something we can agree on. So thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Just for my new member education, has the Safer Committee
Thank you.
ever
Have a good
covered
night.
this in the capital plan, or has ever made it to a piece of paper?
We've looked at options. The problems are there aren't any options that we've come up with that have made a lot of sense yet. We've looked at a bunch of different things and we still haven't figured out. So it's an ongoing. Last in September when we met, thanks Kim, Gordon and Chris were, if I remember, if my memory serves me correctly, were willing to have be part of the Safer Committee. So we'll try to work with the union and try to get that established. But there is no easy answer. Fans blow papers. You know, so you put a bunch of fans in the rooms, they blow papers. We can't afford to put AC in every room, as Kim mentioned. You know, what are some of the options beyond that? It becomes difficult. We looked at different, last year we were talking about shades. Mark Guidaboni had solar panel shades outside the windows. I mean, we've looked at a bunch of different things. We've had meetings. Portable AC units, again, the cost of that in every classroom, and then the impact on the electric bill, and the practicality of it. We have not come up with any easy solution. I did talk with surrounding superintendents, and every one of us is dealing with the exact same thing.
And Michaela came up with some creative solutions with her
She went-
staff and
yes.
moving some classrooms downstairs to open
And that's what we
spaces
did. We
during those
moved as
days.
many classes as we can to downstairs. The main problem is upstairs, the second floor. Michaela also, you know, I walked, you know, and I think it means a lot to the teachers, but I physically walked both buildings, because I wanted them to see, yeah, I get it, you know, it's hot. They aren't kidding. You know, Michaela walked around with a spray bottle. You know, she was pretty well received. So, you know, we went around spraying people. One of the things that they put in, I think it was the last graduating class bought it, was a water bottle filler right outside the cafeteria. That was a huge hit when we had all the issues. Those run about $8,000 to hook into the plumbing. You know, it was a little more than I was expecting, but you know, something like that, even though it's not going to resolve the heat, it is definitely a statement and very much appreciated. So there's some small things. It would probably impact capital plan, so it's something we should probably make sure we have in there. But we haven't found anything yet that.
But it is incumbent upon us
It is
and
incumbent
the
on us,
administration
right.
to continue to look for those creative solutions.
Absolutely.
That don't have massive dollar signs attached to them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Do what we
Just like
can.
maybe blizzard bags, maybe we have heat wave bags.
You know,
District's considering that.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, there are some districts that are looking at the concept of blizzard bags. It would probably be something that would need to be negotiated in a contract, so nothing is easy.
I don't
and
think it would be a difficult
New Hampshire?
negotiation.
I may disagree with you.
Okay.
New Hampshire, some New Hampshire towns have this thing where they essentially have ready bags. When they have.
Duxbury's doing it this year.
Oh, yeah, Duxbury did it last
Yeah,
year. They sent home
just
with work.
negotiated. Yeah, but they're not doing it until after the first 5 days, I think, are used.
So their day will count.
Oh, so the day will, well, online schooling and that all comes, take February school vacation away.
It is pretty much a week.
Yeah.
But I mean, I grew up in Virginia outside of DC, and it was like 100 degrees until October, and then May and June were awful. And that's why I like computers, because
Those
those
are
rooms were air
computerized.
conditioned.
Those are
Yeah.
the
Made you the man you are today,
Yeah.
Eric.
Yeah.
Huh?
Made you the man that you
Yeah.
are today.
Yes.
I mean, part of the problem is that the bricks heat up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, the buildings weren't designed and.
It's that hot, the
yeah.
building will not cool down.
Yes.
Because the bricks
Right.
hold all the heat.
Well, and when they design these rooms, the things, the courtyards, there's no airflow at all in the courtyards. I don't know what they were thinking. I mean, honestly, you have these lovely courtyards, but there's no airflow in there, right? So, you know, they're getting the heat beating in to the courtyard, and there's no airflow. So, you know, it's really the designs of them, you know, full south-facing windows. I mean, oh my God, it's you know, so,
And there's really no shade trees
no,
at all around the
No.
building, right? I haven't seen any.
no.
Gordon?
So again, what is a blizzard bag?
Oh, if we have snow days, there's prepared curriculum where the students would be able to do the work at home, but there's all kinds of criteria that, matter of fact, we just
Can't
spent...
look like regular homework.
It can't look like regular homework, and also, it can't be due necessarily the next day, because not all students would have access to the internet.
Or power.
Or power, or the ability to do it, and then the teachers would have to grade it. The teachers have to be available during that day, which means there has to be some access. There's a lot of issues with it to
Yeah.
get it through the contract. I have 3 Blizzard bag sample policies of districts that have put them in. Some districts are taking the step, if they do, they don't do a Blizzard bag until their 5 expected days are used. So, there's some ways of putting it through. It isn't that we're not thinking about it. I don't know yet we're at the point that I would really want to recommend it.
Yeah, it seems to be much more on the table for districts that have long-distance busing. We have some towns in the Berkshires where students get on one bus, get dropped off at a spot, and get picked up by a second bus to get brought to their school. The commute time's over an hour and a half on a good day. Those communities, the Blizzard bag makes a lot of sense for.
Absolutely.
The criteria from DESE and the criteria potentially that you have to put through negotiations can be quite cumbersome.
Right. It would have to be negotiated because it's time outside of the building day.
So does the day counts?
Yes,
Day would
that's the
count.
idea.
That's-
Yes,
A certain percentage of the students have to complete the work
Right.
in order for it to count.
exactly. Yep. Yep.
Commissioner Chester, who passed away
Yeah.
recently, our just previous Commissioner of Education, when we had our snowpocalypse.
Yep.
Lots of towns went to him for forgiveness of 180 school days.
No way.
He said, no way. So
Yeah.
this is where the Blizzard bag became an option for some Massachusetts schools.
How is it working in Duxbury?
They just put...
Brand new pilot.
Brand new pilot, so we don't know if they'll even use it.
Right.
As I said, there's just a handful that are trying the concept of it. We aren't an area that tends to get a ton, and we also begin before Labor Day weekend. We get those days in. Many districts begin after, so they really, there were many districts that literally ended school on June 30th, which is when they legally have to end school. They had to do makeups in June and stuff, so.
If we look at our MCAS scores and it says that we have an attendance issue, apparently. Even those hot days, I thought about keeping my son home.
Yep. And again, remember that that's 18 days. So, 18 days out.
Of excused
10%.
and unexcused.
It doesn't matter whether they're
Right.
excused or not. Yes, absolutely. It's that 180-day mark.
All right. Do we have any report under old business for guidance?
We are still working on a time to meet. and
Yep.
That's on me.
Yeah, okay. That's good. I was hoping you had gotten that.
At
Okay.
this point, but I did have one thing to add to that, just for informational purposes. So I'm working on an economic development project on the Cape for the Chamber of Commerce, and we just completed a survey of grades 6 through 9 students that was conducted in Canada. We brought it to the Cape, and we surveyed all 50 schools with grades 6 through 9 in it. We had 3,300 responses from the students. It was a 10-minute online survey. And the whole intent of the survey was to ask them where they were getting their ideas about what careers they would pursue. So it was a career intentions survey, a career perceptions survey. So what did they know about available careers, and what careers were they thinking of? And the whole thing was wrapped around the concept of developing your economy based on water. There's a water-based economy on the Cape. It's called the Blue Economy, if anybody's. So I run a project, a Blue Economy project. And anyhow, we just finished it, and it came out just recently. It was done in May. And one of the things that we found that was absolutely predominant across every grade, every gender, every geographic location was that students are getting their information from their parents. That's who they look to for what careers they're going to pursue and what they know about careers. And there were a bunch of other findings that we had as well. But it does, when you're talking about workforce development, it does actually think that you not only need to educate the students about what careers and what career options are, but you actually need to educate the parents as well, somehow. So I was just thinking a little bit about the CTE program here, and in general, I think that that could be a better way to educate parents about different careers that are for that level of, or that type of student of that interest. But I think in general, like I look at my daughter who just went to college and, you know, she's majoring in neuroscience. I don't even think she knows what that means. You know, she's never been in a lab, she doesn't know anything about the brain, but she seems to be interested in it. But I don't think she really understands what it means, and I think that just that survey, I'm happy to share it with folks. It was on the islands as well as southern Plymouth County and all across the Cape. So interesting study we just completed.
It's great information. Thank you. Administrative review.
Paula and Mike were there. Mike could probably speak to it.
We met last Thursday. We reviewed and voted on the superintendent's evaluation timeline and goals. I believe everybody has received them at this point, all committees.
Yes.
The one thing we really stressed was committee involvement with the process, get as many as we can in. It was late the year before. So if you go back to your committees, discuss it every time, you know, we owe it to Joy to let her see what everybody's saying, good or bad, I guess, you know, so unless you guys have anything else you want to add to the...
I think we'll talk about it probably later as the time gets closer to you know, people actually filling it out, especially since we have some new members. But one of the things I talked about doing at that meeting, and I'm hoping to still do it, is I thought that one of the things that we could do would be to take the goals that Joy had and sort of map to some of those administrative standards, which would help folks filling out the form to understand, okay, well, this standard fits with this goal. And so if we feel good about, you know, what's been done in this goal, because there really isn't much in the evaluation that's specific about Joy's goals. And she spends a lot of time sort of crafting them and then, you know, making sure that she addresses them. So I think to be able to consider those as part of the standards and not just in the goals piece of the evaluation, I think that would hopefully be more helpful for you. Yep. So,
And her goals is a working document to everybody, remember that.
Right.
You know.
So that is something I'm hoping to do, is just take a quick look through those and sort of map them to some of the standards.
That would be great.
Great. Glad to hear that we have some veteran members back on that committee
Yes.
working on that. That's great to hear. Thank you. CTE?
So we had, I'm trying to think, Paula was there.
We
had the CTE dinner, which was fantastic. Kids did a great job. Really a lovely dinner, and they did I'm just so pleased with their presentations and their ability to bring forth a wonderful dinner and their enthusiasm, and they're just so proud of what they're doing. So it was really a great night. I think what made it really particularly great this time was Jill Bernardo, one of our chefs, did an exceptional presentation. She's in an administrative program right now on really what the skills the students need going into the workforce. Pretty much what you're talking about, Les. I'm sorry, Leslie, I didn't mean to talk like you're my best friend. I'm sorry. It's getting late. I must be getting tired. But she really did an excellent presentation on what is needed in the workforce and sort of those soft skills that are really needed. And she put a huge amount of effort into it, and it must have been at least a 5-page type document that she went through. And really, I think, you know, you have a group of people here in the workforce. I mean, that's who the advisories are. You know, they're people who run restaurants. They have sheet metal businesses. They're building businesses, Sullivan Tire, I mean, you know, every area. And they were all sitting there, and I think at first when she began, they were kind of like, you know, they saw this packet of paper and they were like, wow. But, you know, as she continued to speak, I think every one of them was like, yeah, that's exactly what we need. And it was such a wonderful presentation, and I was really proud of her. I mean, Jill's really worked very hard. She's just done an exceptional job with our program, with our kids, and, you know, she's really just rising to that next level for us. So it was really a great night, and then they went and met the advisors. And the best part was we then got to go see the new Allied Health program, which we'll take all of you for a walkthrough when we're at the high school next month. It is, you know, I've seen it, but
I was thrilled.
Yeah.
I was thrilled.
yeah, It's gorgeous. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. It really, I cannot believe how well it came out. So we're really pleased with it, and, you know, we're really building that program. So it was a great night, and we have our first CTE meeting next week,
November 6th at 5 o'clock.
2 weeks, yeah.
Yeah, November 6th at 5.
So just as a piece of information, yesterday as part of STEM Week, at Woods Hole Oceanographic, we invited CAPE superintendents, principals, CTE heads, guidance officers, and some teachers. We had about 30 or 40 come to Woods Hole yesterday. We had our HR director get up and say what type of employee that they're looking for, and she focused almost all on the soft skills.
Yep.
So I'm happy to like give our CTE person that list, because she went down this, we want this kind of person, we can't do this kind of, like, it was really specific.
Yep.
And a lot of it was about leadership and team building and all that kind of stuff.
That's
So,
exactly what Jill
I'm happy to
said.
grab our slides and
Yeah.
share them with you. So,
Okay.
then we're also having the robotics class down at Woods Hole in October.
Yep, excellent.
That's great.
So, Chairman's report, all I want to say is, I know that a lot of you do a lot of work behind the scenes. There's a lot of meetings that don't end up on camera, and I just want to thank you for all your time and your dedication. I run into some of you at some of the meetings. I find out you were just with Joy a couple minutes ago, and I just want to thank you for your time and your dedication to this job and the subcommittees that it takes to make it all work. So I really appreciate that. On to the legislative agents report. It came to light recently that there was a supplemental budget put forth up at the State House to backfill fiscal year 18 for a couple items that we would be very interested in. Regional transportation, a circuit breaker, and some grants for school safety programs. That supplemental budget was defeated, and there was a letter written by minority members to House leadership, basically saying what happened, what's going on here. Our state senator for Kingston, Senator DiMacedo, was actually one of the Republican senators who put the supplemental budget together to try and fund some of the areas of education that we've been desperately seeking funding for. Our FY19 budget is perfectly safe. It's one of the healthiest, most acknowledging of our school's needs that I've seen since I've been on school committee involved in public education. It's one of the best budgets we've seen since ed reform actually happened in the early 90s. What I think was actually going on was there was some politics going on both sides of the table, and as your legislative agent, I expressed my displeasure with us being used as a chess piece in that game of politics. I appreciated the gesture by the minority leadership to put forth that supplementary budget, and I asked that the majority please reconsider. There's still time in the legislative window for them to file a supplemental budget by October 31st of this year. And if you don't mean it, don't put it on the table. And please support us. We need every single dollar. It matters. Thank you very much. Last night, I was at the Division III MASC meeting to discuss the resolutions. Had a meeting earlier this year. You gave me authority to vote on your behalf, to vote my conscience on the resolutions. I wanted to let you know, even though I am part of the leadership of MASC, I plan on voting no on Resolution 8. Resolution 8 is asking for a cut of the pie if Massachusetts moves forward with legalized wagering on sporting events. I just feel that with the implications of betting and how it adversely affects younger people, especially younger males and socially, economically disadvantaged people, that I can't put my name behind asking for money that would come from that source. So I plan on speaking on the floor against that resolution. That doesn't mean that I don't want the Foundation Budget Review Commission, its recommendations for fully funding education in Massachusetts to be fulfilled. I just don't want to be attaching education in Massachusetts to things like legalized gambling and legalized recreational marijuana. And I don't want to put our name and stamp of approval behind that either. So I wanted to bring that forth to you tonight because I know that could be controversial. I know I'm going against the leadership of MASC, and I don't know if I expressed that view clearly enough to you when I asked for your confidence in allowing me to vote on your behalf. So if you would like to guide me on that particular article, I'd be more than happy to take your guidance. I will still speak my mind, but I will vote whatever the committee tasks me with on November 9th. You guys okay with me doing that?
I am.
Okay.
Do you need a vote?
You already gave me the authority. I just felt I needed to tell you. When I went to the meeting last night, I turned a lot of heads when I said I absolutely will not support the resolution, and that made me kind of think that I needed to bring that to you guys and really clarify my position on that. I was on the resolutions committee. I helped craft the majority of the resolutions. That was not one of the resolutions I helped craft, and I will be speaking against it. Leslie Ann?
I think I trust your judgment. I don't necessarily agree with your policy, but I trust your judgment.
Thank you.
So I don't want you to think that me saying no comments on changing your way you're doing things means I agree with you, because I don't, but I trust your judgment.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, that's it from me. Moving on to negotiations, employee relations, safety subcommittee.
So we need to set a meeting, so I'll try to hook up with Gordon and Eric and the union. They knew the 2 members were voted from September, and I thought they'd reach out to set a meeting, and they haven't, so, but maybe they're interested. I'm just busy as it is for everyone.
Okay, and on behalf of PAC, I know that, sorry. So the request to begin negotiation for 8 employees?
Yes, we received a letter from our 8 employees, which are a non-union group, to begin negotiations. Previously, there were a few school committee members who negotiated separately with that union. I did have a conversation with Fred to ask his opinion because they don't have a lawyer representing them, so it is a different kind of a group. Fred said that he would be comfortable if the school committee were interested in doing the negotiations if I were to attend, and then he could sort of counsel me. Unfortunately for me, he feels I have enough experience with negotiations that I get, I'm sorry, that I get the process, which I do, and also I certainly get the budget implications of some of the decisions. So he's fine with going if you would like him to go, but he said that if as long as he would be consulted before offers were made, and I think that's sort of you know, a sort of a reasonable approach. If Fred gets involved, it becomes a scheduling nightmare, where if the members would like to, you know, I just was looking actually at who's on negotiations, but if we wanted to just work as sort of a group with them, we could do that.
I'm comfortable that I've done that methodology before with a group that didn't bring a lawyer with them or even an association representative with them. Kind of flips the table and starts things on a sour note when we walk in with our lawyer.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Eric? I know
I agree.
Yep.
Okay.
So on negotiations, it's Gordon, Ed, Eric, Chris, and Polly, you're an alternate. So if you're okay with the 4 of you, I could reach out and get some dates and times from them and see what we could work out.
Yeah. Any dissenting view from the committee? All right, great, go ahead.
Okay, great.
Thank you. So, PAC, I saw that we sent a letter to the Pilgrim Area Collaborative letting them know that we had duly elected Ed as our representative.
Yes.
And unfortunately, Ed couldn't make it here tonight, so we have no report from Ed. How about for policy?
I'm actually, Jill and I are working with Fred. We're trying to update a couple of policies that we have in our handbook that we'd like to clean up a little bit. I have the MASC recommendations, but we're trying to also do another one with Fred at this point. So once we have Fred's finished, I'll reach out to the policy members and set a meeting.
All right. Revolving funds
We should set a meeting. We should take a look at the
for policy?
For
Revolving.
For revolving,
Yeah.
okay.
We can, it's a little bit early in the year, if you wanted to try to do that now.
When would you suggest, Joy? I wouldn't want to meet when it's not meaningful.
At this point, there isn't, well, Christine, I don't know if you'd want to weigh in, but I don't feel like there's all that much information in yet on revolving that.
Do you mean new information versus
Right.
how things were going last year?
Yes.
You know, one of the primary ones is probably school lunch, and that's still very early, and we're seeing how
Right.
some of the changes are developing. So
Okay.
we don't have quite enough information on that.
I don't think
To
so.
make a decision right now.
Maybe sometime after the new year. I did want to say, just because we're revolving, I know it's late, but I was up at the high school for NEASC, and when we were in Kingston, they were talking about the fish, that our new food service director is really making some wonderful differences. So she bought in a seafood consortium, and they had red snappers, and they actually had red perch, excuse me. Got my
I saw
fish.
the pictures
Yeah.
too.
So they were, I actually ate it today.
It was kind of fishy.
It was, it was, but they actually had the fish there, they actually fried cleaned fresh fish with like a panko on it, and they had a really nice dipping sauce, and they put them out for the kids to try, to see if they liked it, and the kids got to vote if they wanted to add it to the menu, and they did it in Kingston, and then today they were doing it up at the high school, so before we did the interview, I left Jill, and I ran and got a piece of the fish, and there was a whole bunch, I mean, all the kids and I were standing there. It was great, it was wonderful, and all the kids were really excited, and she's like, bought in a lot of new foods on the menu, so there's really a sort of a new
Even
feel.
the adjectives they're using on the menu have
Yes.
changed,
Yeah.
and the kids have noticed.
Chris says that hasn't changed at all.
But what's that?
Just what I hear from my high schooler is that he hasn't seen any change.
Oh, no, there are, I mean, they
Well,
were just talking about the
you're talking to
chickpeas
a
and,
male in high school,
Yeah.
right?
yeah.
My 5th grade daughter has noticed. My
Yeah.
3rd grade daughter has noticed.
Look at the menus and see if you don't notice the difference, Laura. I mean, you know, it's just the beginning,
Look at the
and she's sort of,
verbiage.
Yeah.
she's using up sort of some food that maybe wasn't ordered quite the way we would have liked, you know, and so we're starting to move into the new menus. But, you know, within, what are we, 6 weeks into the year, she's already bringing in food tastings, which is something that I've always really wanted to do with fresh
You're
fish.
8 weeks in, I think, at this point.
Am I 8?
Yeah, we're pretty close to 8 or 9 right now.
We're 8 weeks in. No wonder I'm tired.
That's right.
And just as feedback, I had to call her for some computer issue I was having with one of them, and she's just so helpful and responsive.
Yes, she's really lovely. She's
Yeah.
making some very nice changes, you know, in a very orderly, thoughtful way. And she really is owning everything. So I'm just really, we're really pleased.
Yes.
She's very easy to work with.
Do they make it deliveries to the administration building?
I was going to mention that next, yes. Yeah, I'm going to work on that one.
She's gonna open a food truck.
Yeah.
Paula, would you like to bring us up to speed on some of the safer information? I know we already covered some of it.
We did, and I won't be redundant, and I'll be quick. At our meeting tonight, a couple of things. The high school water heaters that we talked about at our last meeting, those have been ordered, and the purchase of them plus installation came in a little bit under what we were anticipating, was $67,000 instead of about $82,000. It's a necessity, they both have to be replaced, and we're targeting December Christmas vacation to do that. What's surfaced since then is a need with our wastewater treatment plant. Over February school vacation, it's likely that we're going to need to have bearing, do we? Yeah.
Ball bearing.
Ball bearing.
Ball bearings replaced. We're looking at what the cost would be. Do we?
We don't have real numbers yet.
We
We're working
don't
on that,
have
yeah.
real numbers on that. That entire, and that's February school vacation. If this processing plant fails, we're pumping every single day, which is very expensive and cumbersome, obviously, quite a burden. We talked about having somebody come in and look at this facility overall, because there may be a lot of maintenance that may have to happen, and it's a very integral part of the campus. So we're talking about trying to find somebody to do that. This will all be baked into the capital plan and the envelope study summary that we're coming up with. I think those are the highlights. I don't know that I'm going to really talk about too much more than that. SAFER has a lot on their plate. It's always been a committee that's had a lot on their plate. It might be time to sort of, again, kind of step back and get our arms around everything and really be very transparent to the 3 towns about what do we have in front of us, what's the timeline on some of this stuff, and how do we tackle it? I'll get off my soapbox now.
There was a lot discussed in that meeting, and that was a very good summary of an hour of heavy discussion.
Yeah, it was. It was a very detailed discussion tonight.
One of the most salient points I took from the meeting and was we need to maybe press pause on any new ideas at this point, any concepts that might be a little bit outside the box that we'd be interested in pursuing if times were a little bit easier, and really wrap our hands around, like Paula said, wrap our arms around the issues we're facing now and really tackle them and focus in on them with intensity and with cooperation with the three towns to make sure we're being transparent and we're asking for their input of how they'd like to approach it budgetarily, whether it be in our operational budget or from E&D or from some other funding source that they might come up with that we wouldn't even consider. So, thank you, Paula. Treasurer's report, we don't have Ed here tonight.
I can let you know what's going on.
Thank you.
The full warrants that circulated tonight, we had 2 regular warrants totaling $197,289.43. 2 payroll warrants totaling $1,574,929.34. For a total of $1,772,218.77. Thank you for signing.
Thank you, Christine. Union 31?
Did you skip over the school start time? I don't know if there's any report, but.
I did skip over it.
No meeting.
No report. Mike, was there any Union 31 activity?
No.
Nope, okay. Single signature warrants.
I have that information also.
Thank you.
The members that were appointed by the school committee, Eric Crone, Laura Tilton, and Chris Eklund, came into our office to sign warrants. And we had 17 accounts payable warrants totaling $1,287,322. 2 payroll warrants totaling $1,558,906.71 for a total of $2,846,228.71.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming in.
Yeah, thank you to Laura, Eric, and Chris for doing that. It allows us to have these meetings, not every single month, and also continue the business of the district. So thank you to the 3 of you for doing that for the rest of us. I'd now like to entertain a motion to enter into executive session for the purposes of the SLEA contract discussion and vote pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, only to return to regular session for the purposes of adjournment.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, this takes a roll call, I believe, so, Mike?
Yes.
Paula?
Yes.
Gordon?
Yes.
Leslie Ann? Okay, Laura?
Yes?
Yes.
Yes. All right, thank you very much. We are adjourned from regular session.
We can meet in the library conference room. It'll just be 5 minutes.
Introduced to some of our newer members. Galen Thompson, she's from Joy's office. She's going to be taking the minutes for us. Lisa is on a much-deserved vacation, and we hope that she is having a fantastic time.
And we hope she comes
to
back
us.
really, really soon.
And she never goes away again.
Never, ever allowed to go away again.
So first, I'd like to ask for approval of our September 13th, 2018 regular session minutes, please. So moved. Are there any amendments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Any abstentions? At our last meeting, we received a packet containing some executive session minutes. I had the opportunity to go through them and vet them and make sure there was no information that needed to be withheld. I didn't see any reason to withhold that information. So at this time, I will accept a motion to accept the executive session minutes from our April 13, 2017 meeting, May 11, 2017, August 10, 2017, September 14, 2018, October 12, 2017, November 9, 2017, February 8, 2018, April 12th, 2018, I would motion to hold from that pile.
So it's supposed to be 2017, but September 14th.
Oh, I have to be careful there, Joy. In our approval of minutes, it says September 14th, 2018.
I have them right here. Yes, should have been 17. Sorry, typo.
So, would you like to make an amendment to my motion?
I would like to make a friendly amendment to change that to September 14th, 2017.
Thank you for catching that, Eric.
All right, thank you, Eric. So the friendly amendment was September 14th, should read September 14th, 2017. We're voting to release all of the executive sessions from that list with the exception of April 12th, 2018. Would anybody like to move that motion with Eric's friendly amendment?
So,
Do we hear a second?
Second.
Thank you.
Just a question.
Go ahead.
Can we vote?
Question?
Thank you.
I'm going to abstain because I wasn't at any of these meetings.
Right, okay. According to Robert's Rules of Parliamentary Procedure, even if you weren't present, you can vote yes if the rest of the committee says they believe it to be a true document and you feel comfortable. You're more than welcome to abstain. I think we have enough votes to
Okay.
pass it, even with your abstentions.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstentions? All right, so Leslie Ann and Gordon are abstaining from that vote. Thank you very much. And we're moving on to the principal's report, home turf. Jim?
Yes, so just a couple things that we have coming up. So we have the haunted halls that are coming up on Friday, which is tomorrow night. As always, anyone is welcome to come. I know Joe Shays used to come every year. He used to love coming in and seeing the kids, all excited walking into the building. So it's the time of the day that this school, a whole floor, transitions to a haunted house. And it's really one of the students' favorite events. It's our most popular event. We have somewhere about 75% of our entire student body will come out to that event. And we have somewhere about 60 high school students that have participated in the event here that come back and play roles and help us set up and still are part of the event. So I want to thank the high school students for coming back and still being a part of it and bringing it to our middle school students. So that's tomorrow night. We have a couple of field
Jim?
trips that, sorry, go ahead.
What times?
So right after, I'll go through it quickly. So right after school, the high school students come over and we transition the school into the haunted house. And then at 6:30 is when the students start arriving. And they'll go through the haunted house at 6:30. And then we have a dance in the cafeteria and students are in costume. And that ends at 9:30.
Jim, if somebody wants to go to the school team, do they have to be qualified first?
I put, if anyone here wants to go, we actually escort you through. So just let me know that you're coming, or just when you come here, just let the teacher know who's in the lobby that you're here, your school committee, and you're looking for me. I'm at the beginning of the haunted house, so I'm always there when the kids get off the elevator and go into the first scene. So I'll come out, I'll greet you, and then we'll have a teacher, we'll walk you through the haunted house. So like we do every year, we have a teacher with every group of students that walk through the haunted house, and we have a teacher in each of the pods managing the scene with the high school students. So just let the teacher know in the lobby, and they'll radio me, and I'll come out, and you'll get a chance to go through, and you'll go through with some of our students. So you get to see their expressions. And Jason has been nice enough to come and see that firsthand.
Luckily, I had 4 Halifax football players with me on my way through, and it's the only reason I made it.
It's pretty fun stuff.
Yes, so we've had Joy and Jill come through, so it's kind of a fun night. So please come and have fun with us if you have the time tomorrow night. So 2 field trips that I want to talk about. One is the Kennedy Space Center. So I passed that out. So Kathy Benash has a science club, and she's looking to take students back to the Kennedy Space Center through the science club, which makes it available to any student in the 8th grade that is in the science club, has an option to do a NASA project that they'll build throughout the year. They'll submit it to NASA, and then they'll go down to the Kennedy Space Center. And they're looking to go January 10th to the 14th. And the second overnight field trip is Nature's Classroom. So they're looking to go towards the end of May and bring students down to Nature's Classroom. And again, it is, I know most of us are somewhat familiar with Nature's Classroom, but it does use the world around us to connect science and the things that we're doing in our classroom to what they're learning, and they're learning it in the real world. So that's just a basic overview for Nature's Classroom.
Are there any questions for Jim about any of those overnight field trips? One of the favorite things to do on the committee is to give permission for these overnight field trips. Would anybody like to make?
I found that interesting, because there was no fanfare or special information or anything like that. And as we stated before, they had moved to the mean with the next gen MCAS, so it looks like they're beginning to generate.
Jill, where did you see that?
It was listed when you go to the report, if it was like 403 or 405. I think they list it with a little asterisk at the bottom.
For science?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
But no special notification or any detail on that, so. Let's see, where did I go? Did I go the wrong way? Yes, I did. So here is our growth for English Language Arts and Mathematics, and we are missing the 50 SGP for ELA and Mathematics, and we had a median score of 55 for Science. But in here, in the official report, growth report that I ran, they don't list average SGP for Science. So we're going to be taking a look at what may account for that and making sure that we're addressing the necessary standards in all of our courses. The overall results for the high school, again, it's really tiny, but you are at least familiar with the categories. To the far left are the categories where all students received scores, and we did very well in science achievement, ELA achievement, we got 4 points. So here's an example where our achievement, we received 4 points, and yet in our growth, we didn't meet the 50 SGP. So just some interesting differences that we're going to begin to struggle with and look at and try to figure out what that may or may not mean for our students in particular. When we look at the high school completion achievement, scoring 3 points in all of those categories. When we look at chronic absenteeism, 0 out of 4 points, and advanced coursework completion, 2 out of 4 points. So there's some areas that we're hoping that the Bridge and Bright program might be able to address some of those issues. In advanced coursework, beginning to have those conversations with our departments and our guidance counselors in terms of how we can encourage more advanced coursework. So here is the achievement detail for Silver Lake, and again, they set it up similarly. Even though it's a legacy MCAS, here again, they're comparing 2017 achievement with 2018 achievement, and the change in those scores will determine whether or not we received points, whether we exceeded the target, met the target, improved but did not meet, no change, or declined. So here is achievement for ELA points. Here is achievement for math points. And again, no change consistently with math. Achievement for STE, we have several categories where we met the target with all students. We met the target for achievement. We met the target for students with disabilities, and we met the target for the subcategory of white. We improved in our high needs categories, but we did not meet the target, and so therefore we only received 2 out of 4 points there. And ELA, We are below target in terms of growth. In our SGPs, you can see some areas, lowest performing is an area that we are looking at in particular. And so we do know who those students are, and so we can get a sense of what courses they may have taken, and the curriculum of those courses. And those students' names are available in the principal's Dropbox. They can also be found on EWIS, I believe. Growth for math. Again, we have some areas where we're slightly below, and we should be able to bring those up. Again, we want to look at what's going on with the lowest performing growth. So our next steps, which we've kind of begun to talk about, is that we're going to review our subject, grade, and student level data. We're going to identify potential gaps in the curriculum. We're going to recommend interventions and create plans based on student needs, which is something that we have done all along for our students, but we will continue to do based upon this new data. As always, what we want to do is incorporate research-based best practices wherever possible, high leverage strategies to help improve the outcomes for all students, not just the lowest performing. We're going to begin to look at, we're excited about the Bright Bridge program at the high school and beginning to look at whether or not we can make some improvements in terms of attendance and whether or not it has an impact on graduation data. And again, we'd have to wait several years to probably jump to those conclusions, but again, it's wonderful that we have that as an opportunity to begin working with. We're going to be looking at increasing enrollment in advanced coursework for our students. And just a note for everyone, the next generation test will be introduced at the high school level in English, language arts, and math this spring. But the minimum passing level will not change until at least the class of 2023. And science, next generation science will be in 2020 when they take their first online.
So I have a question. So for the students that are in the needs improvement level, I understand you offer summer support, but if I recall, there's a letter that says, if you don't come get the summer support, then we may not be able to justify passing you or something, or graduating you or something. I just recall a
So
letter.
that I think is for the waiver. So if a student fails and they're not able to receive the support that we provide them, whether it's over the summer course or throughout the year, we have to be able to show, if they still don't pass the test, we have to be able to show and demonstrate that we've given them every opportunity to succeed and pass.
Make that motion.
I would love to make that motion.
I'll second it.
All right. Any questions or discussion? All those in favor of giving authorization to Jim for the overnight field trip, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions? It's unanimous. Great
Thank
work.
you.
Thank your teachers again for their dedication and hard work for those outside of the normal hours efforts that they're putting for our kids.
It's true, and it is a lot of work on the teacher's behalf, but the experience is well worth it, and we thank you for your support with those things. And then I did want to just mention that we did have 130 students sign up for the New York City trip. I wanted to let you guys know, I know one of the things that Mike asked was that could we keep it open so that any student that wanted to come to New York City, they could. We did that. We had enough students that wanted to do it that we were able to add a third bus, and we did that. So any student who had interest is coming to New York City. So I just want to get back on that. Let's move on. So I want to thank you guys for that. So another thing that we had in grade 8 was our SOS, and it's a suicide awareness, and it's a safety thing that we do with our 8th grade. We had that with all of our 8th grade students, and then any students that through that had an awareness of a friend or some difficulty, we have our guidance staff that's opened up, and they come and they talk to our guidance staff. So we did that. We sent out messages to the homes and to our parents to let them know, and it went very well. Our guidance staff really did a phenomenal job with our kids, and our kids really were sensitive to the topics that had come up. So I want to thank everybody for that. We also started our flag football. This is our 8th annual flag football tournament. So that started. Hopefully the championship game, I won't throw the pick six and lose the game for us this year, so we'll see. That's what happened to me last year. And in fact, my AP put that in the email. Maybe we'll win if Jim's not quarterback this year. So I want to thank my AP for that, for the vote of confidence. So that started on Monday. It was going to move into Tuesday, but we had some rain on Tuesday, so we're going to be completing that flag football tournament next week. And so that's it for me. So thanks, guys. And over to Michaela.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. In your handouts, we have a copy of the October 1 class size report. There's no real major changes since last year, but I do want to point out that we have 18 independent studies this year. And I point that out because these are teachers who volunteer to take on this coursework and working with these students beyond their contractual obligations. So I want to thank the staff members for volunteering to do that to help our students. We had parent-teacher conferences earlier this month. We had 239 parents make appointments for 282 of our students. Ms. Nickerson, our adjustment counselor, hosted a Healthy Body, Healthy Minds table again this year. One of the things that we recognize is that 2-hour time slot, it's impossible for every parent to have a conference with their teacher, so we do encourage parents who aren't able to schedule a conference to contact guidance or reach out to the teachers directly to communicate their concerns they may have about their students. I have an out-of-state and overnight field trip request. Every year the music department goes on a trip. This year they would like to go to Disney World, Florida. The trip would be open to all band member and choir students. It would be May 1st through 5th. They would leave Wednesday after school and return Sunday nights. They would only miss 2 days of school. Ms. DePasqua is planning the trip with Suburban Travel and Tours out of Providence, Rhode Island. They've planned the music trips for the last 20 years and have a great reputation for student travel. The cost for each family or for each student is about $1,300, so we recognize that that's a financial stretch for some of our families. So the music department and students will be hosting a number of fundraisers to help offset the costs, and certainly we would work with any family of a student who wishes to go but wouldn't be able to afford it. The first of those fundraisers took place 2 weeks ago. It was our Silver Lake Idol competition that took place. So with your permission, we would like to approve this overnight and out-of-state field trip.
Anybody like to move the motion to approve the overnight and out-of-state field trip for the high school?
I'll make that motion.
Any seconds? Any discussion or questions about that field trip? All those in favor?
I have a question.
Oh, go-
Sorry,
No.
I'm choking, so.
Sorry, go ahead.
So I know you said that this is obviously a more expensive trip, and I know you said that they're doing fundraisers, but even with fundraisers, I would assume that the fundraisers go to bring down the cost for everybody. But if there are people who can't pay, that's still a big chunk of money. Where does that money come from that the school would be able to
So
help?
we would have to work with those individual families and see what other resources we could tap into, whether it's through PTO, mini grants, or other organizations that can support our students.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Good question.
absolutely.
Good question, good
Need
answer.
some water?
No, I'm good.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Great, thank you very much.
And again, thank your teachers for
I will,
that extra effort as
absolutely,
well.
I will. They're looking forward to it. October, as you know, is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and it's become sort of a month-long celebration of hope and support at our school with our staff and our students and our extending community members. This year, our goal was to raise a total of $10,000 throughout the month of October. We were about $115 short last year of our $10,000 goal. All the money that we raised goes directly to the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute at South Shore Hospital in Weymouth, so it goes directly to local patients whose insurance may or may not cover certain paths of treatment. So there have been a ton of fundraisers taking place. Every sports team has gotten involved, every club, every activity. There's been some fun staff fundraisers as well. We had our annual kickball game. Miss Orcutt and Miss Cahill organized the flock party this year where we had pink flamingos that you had to try to surprise somebody with, and we have a lot of fun. I promise we've been working this month too, but it's been a lot of fun, and I think it teaches our students, or we hope that it teaches our students about how to give back to your community in different ways. And for many of our students whose families are impacted by this disease, it's hopefully offering them some hope and encouragement. So we end the month-long celebration tomorrow with our Pink Out Day. Funds are still coming in from all the organizations and fundraisings we've done, so we don't have a complete tally yet. Our penny war competition ends tomorrow. We have some companies that are doing matching gifts for people who have donated. So I'm hoping to report that we've met our 10K goal next month, or at our next meeting. If you happen to pop into school tomorrow, you're gonna see a lot of pink tutus and pink feathered boas. But it's just, everybody's all in for this, and it's a, so that does not work in their favor if they don't participate.
And the state has the power to grant a waiver or not.
Right.
We just have to put together the paperwork, and we have to show the student did everything they could do to pass the test.
That makes sense. And the other question I had was on your other next step, increase enrollment in advanced coursework. So I remember the wonderful presentation you gave, I don't know if it was the last meeting or the meeting before, but how many students are taking, at AP level classes, which is just remarkable. But from what I understand from college admissions process, they don't want you to take an AP class if you're going to fail it, or you're going to get a D in it. So that is something we hear clearly, because that's a clear indication that if you're going to take that class in high school and you take it in college, you're likely going to, and I think the average admissions office says that your GPA is going to drop from high school to college is like 0.7. So if you get a 4.0, you're likely going to get a 3.3 in college in general. So I'm just sort of wondering, the increased enrollment I think is great. I mean, you all have done yeoman's work making it open to students who want to take it, which is really reducing the barriers, which is great. But I think that we have to be a little careful about increasing enrollment, because we don't want to increase enrollment then for them to show on our college transcript that or a high school transcript that they took it but they didn't do well in it. So there's a kind of a careful aspect in that.
Yeah. That's where guidance and the administrative team and students and parents work together to determine the best fit for the child.
Yeah.
What we want to try to eliminate is an assumption, and a lower expectation for certain students.
Certain types of students.
Right.
I
Yes.
totally understand
Yeah.
that, and that's so much appreciated.
Again, absolutely, that would be an unintended consequence if we would just say, okay, everybody is taking this.
Yeah.
And that's not something we would want to do. But we want to find ways to make it not only possible for them to challenge themselves, but to be successful in that challenge.
Right.
So making sure that we set them up for success.
I do think...
And the indicator that's in the accountability formula is about passing advanced coursework. Like it's not just who enrolled, but they have to pass in order to kind of get the points. So we want kids to be successful in those. So it's not just, okay, everybody take AP classes.
Yes.
And I think the other piece that's really important is that students have the sense, and although it's been a while since I certainly brought my kids for college acceptances, but they want to see it on the transcript, and I think they'd rather see a high C, a B minus, than an A in a lower class. So I think that, at least that was conversations that we had, was that, even if a child, they want to see the kids trying, they want to see the persistence, they want to see that the kids can improve and to be successful. And we want our students to know we believe in them, and that is why we have open enrollment, and that's why we've been recognized over the years. And I think, it's the whole idea of a growth mindset, which is something that we have really tried to focus on doing it. I mean, we don't want to put a child in a class that's not possible, but, we want to give every child the chance to be as successful as possible.
And that may start as a freshman, encouraging them to go up one level, from CP2 to CP1 as a sophomore.
Right.
And then, all right, as a junior.
Yeah, the growth is great.
Yeah, it doesn't mean we're going to pop them right into those AP classes. That might not be a good fit.
No.
And I think also just one other aspect of that, an increase enrollment in advanced coursework, I think one of the things is to make sure if we're going to do that, which we're already at a really high level, and I would say that probably already need this now, but part of it, I think, is making sure the resources are there to support the student when they go in. And I don't necessarily mean the AP teacher itself, because God knows they're doing probably everything they possibly can at that level to make that child proficient at that level. But I know that finding outside resources to support an AP level student is, you're not going to get a National Honor Society student to go tutor someone in an AP class, because, they're at that same level generally, as you know. So, I know in our experience, we had to go outside and find private tutoring for an AP class. I think if you're going to do that, which I think is great, I just think you need to make sure the resources are there to support the students to be successful in that class outside of the classroom.
Paula?
The one thing I would add to this conversation, and I'm going to preface this by saying I'm not a bad parent. If I had understood, and if my boys had understood freshman year, the advantages of taking an AP class, they would have done so, but particularly my youngest. Perhaps in freshman parent breakfast, freshman orientation, maybe in particular, and I know unfortunately, parent-teacher conferences aren't always well-attended, but I think a lot of times what I heard from teachers is a lot of times they see the parents with the kids that are doing well and what have you, maybe targeting some of those conversations to prep the parent and the child for the fact that you probably would be successful in an AP class, and you might want to think about next year enrolling one. Kind of, if I had understood when applying to college and the ability to test out of classes a bit more, I would have pushed my sons more into AP classes, and they would have been perhaps jumping over some courses and walking in with some credits at the onset. And, you know, I'm probably like your average parent out there, and I was very involved with the kids in school, and yet I didn't get that until it was too late, so.
And that's actually something that the teachers union and I, we've talked about doing a curriculum night that has a component of that focusing on AP classes and what the expectations are, what the advantages are to taking them, and having that informative piece for our parents. So, and I think that speaks to, I think what the teachers are looking to do. So thank you for sharing that.
Because I wasn't a bad parent.
Yes, we've been fighting about this for the last year. We're trying to get together and figure out how to make it happen, but this has been
clearly there's a need, so.
Yes, we feel the same.
Yeah.
Are there any other points of discussion on the topic of the MCAS testing?
Just
Gordon?
What's the amount of time that is spent on this
Don't ask.
with the administration, with the teachers? Because it just seems like
Ginormous.
the amount of resources that are going into that for no value.
So-
I'm not sure I'd say no value, but it's probably a larger discussion, which I think was where you were going.
So I'd like to just put a capstone on the conversation and try and frame out all the different angles of attack that came from the members of the committee and even the administration as well. First, I'd like to start by thanking Jill for making this presentation tonight and taking the time to try and dissect what can be very ambiguous data into salient points that we can digest and understand at, a regular, everyday parent and citizen of our community.
Great demonstration of community support for our students and for our staff. If you haven't been on our website recently, I encourage you to visit. One of the new challenges or fundraisers we came up this year with a staff music video. If you're familiar with the Kiki Challenge, which is very popular over the summer, where people on social media made their own version of a famous song that was very popular. So we did a little breast cancer awareness spin with the video with the help of First Student and PAC TV. So I encourage you to click on that YouTube link on the homepage, and please don't make fun of my embarrassing dance moves, but it is a...
You were silent.
It was a lot of fun to do. Everybody volunteered their time after contractual times one day, stayed late one afternoon to make the video, so it was a lot of fun. For student and staff highlights, earlier this month, our student council hosted CMask, and over 800 students from schools across the region attended. They went to an opening session. There were workshops throughout the day that were presented by both students and staff members, and keynote speaker Ed Garrity spoke to students, and it was a great opportunity for them to network with other student council members. And I spoke with our student council president afterwards, Bella Real, and she had a huge smile on her face. It has been a dream of our student council now to host this event, and so we're thankful that the middle school and the elementary schools were able to host our professional development days for staff members, so we could clear the building out that day, the day of the in-service day, and host almost 1,000 people for this. So I was very proud of our students and thankful for the teachers who were a part of that. As part of our continued efforts to ensure the safety of our students, we worked in conjunction with KPD and local K-9 units earlier this week and conducted a stay put drill. This is a non-emergency drill where we lock the doors and stay in place, but we continue with instruction as usual in the event that we need to move someone through the hallway or make access, and we worked with our K-9 units to ensure our school was safe. We'll continue to work on conducting drills throughout the year to reevaluate and make sure that we're staying up to par with our ALICE procedures.
And the middle school did the same.
Yes.
Yep.
They did, simultaneously. We had our STEM Expo at the high school yesterday. It was for the whole district, but we were honored to be able to host. Several of our students participated with projects on aquaponics, the impact of plastic in oceans, astronomy. One student designed an all-terrain wheelchair that could go upstairs and could lift a person to be eye level with someone who was standing. Another student is working on a bionic hand. Just amazing the things that they're developing. One student had a concept for a community center and used his skills from his engineering class, but also what he's learning in his psychology and sociology classes and put those all together. So it was a neat demonstration. And the elementary school kids were adorable as well. I'm very excited and to share their projects and what they've been learning. So it was a pretty neat event. Ms. Schwier, who's in our social studies department, she hosted her annual Cultural Awareness Day yesterday. Several students and staff members who have either lived or traveled abroad or come from other parts of our country shared their experiences about what it was like living in a different culture. Countries like Holland, Italy, Belgium, Greece, Ghana, Spain, Colombia, Mexico, Cuba, Taiwan, Thailand, Ukraine, Dominican Republic, and New Zealand were all represented, as well as the states of Utah, Indiana, and Texas. Today was day one of our two-day NEAS collaborative conference meeting, in which 4 educators are visiting our school. They're reviewing our self-study report. They observed classrooms. They met with different representative groups, staff, students, administrators, district-level administrators, parents, and they will use everything that they observed compared to what we wrote in our report. And tomorrow they'll give us a brief quick feedback, and then they'll have a few weeks to write a full report, and all of the suggestions in their report will help us write our growth plan in preparation for our decennial visit, which will be in October of 2020. We had an opportunity to sit with them real quick at the end of the day today before they went off to conduct their evening meetings, and I'm going to quote one of the individuals. He said, "It is so evident how much your staff cares and how loved the students are." And he said that wasn't just from what they saw in the building and from what they read in our reports, but they met with our students, and the adults left the room, and they said it was very clear from our students how much they feel loved and cared for by their teachers. So I thought that would be important to share here. Next week, we will be inducting 63 students into the National Honor Society. That ceremony will take place Tuesday at 6 p.m. And then the only other student highlight I wanted to share upcoming, we have our annual traditional Thanksgiving football game we are hosting this year, so all are invited to attend. Leading up to that, we have a flag football game each year, the alternating school hosts. So this year we will be at Pembroke. Student council officers have upped the ante this year, and so the losing school administration team has to wear the other school's gear. So I'm really hoping I don't have to wear a Titan sweatshirt, but I will. And Mr. Talbot has agreed to wear some Laker gear if Silver Lake wins. So that should be a fun event. Students who come and participate in that donate a toy for the Toys for Tots campaign. So it's a fundraiser that both schools come together. You know, although we're competitive, it's all in good fun and charitable donations. So. All right, lastly, I've got some requests to accept donations. We have a 2004 Chrysler Sebring convertible to be used as a teaching supply tool in the automotive technology program that was donated by Kenneth Paulson in Duxbury, Massachusetts. We also would like to acknowledge the Kingston Business Association, and I'd like to ask the school committee to vote to accept a check in the amount of $2,600 to the Silver Lake Music Department. They hosted a fundraiser, the Waterfront Festival, in August, and the proceeds they would like to donate to our music department. They would like to present that check at the winter concert on December 14th. It would be presented by Eric Christensen, George Berger, and Josh Warren would all be on hand to present that. And of course, we would send our letter of thanks and appreciation if approved.
Entertain a motion to accept the donations and to send letters of thanks.
So moved.
Second? Any discussion, questions? All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay, and then my last part, sorry, I'm very long tonight. In preparation for NEASC, we worked with PAC TV to create a We Are Silver Lake video. We shared it out with our staff earlier, and we wanted to share it with you as well, and then we're gonna put it on our webpage. I think it just really captures the essence of who we are as a school and community. Thank you, Jim.
Love it. There's definitely some data that can be gleaned from the testing, and our administrators and our classroom teachers and our special ed teachers and our guidance counselors parse through that information and try and find every usable piece of information that can help them make a difference in their classroom and in the lives of each and every one of their individual students. I would like to repeat that this school committee has in the past called for a moratorium on high-stakes testing for many reasons. The impact on the students, the impact on the teachers, the time away from genuine instruction and assessment, both formative and summative, and the amount of time it takes away from our administrative team on duties that would be far more valuable. So if you heard any of the comments from the committee tonight, it was in no way a judgment on our administrative team or our teachers or our students who we know come to school every single day and put their best foot forward. This is a condemnation of the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and their high-stakes testing and their commitment now to MCAS 2.0. And I personally call for them to have a moratorium on high-stakes testing until they can establish better criteria, better data analysis, and something that is far more beneficial to the students of the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Jason, can I ask one more? Does the test ask in the beginning if something's going on with the child?
Yeah, can I just add, I brought up earlier that we had used the results in the elementary school committee to identify an issue and rectify it. So I think there are some positives to having a test, some sort of test. We could have done it probably outside of MCAS. We could have done our own testing, but so there is some positive, but I still agree with most of what Jason just said as well. So it does take a lot of time.
It does, indeed.
All right, let's talk about something new. On to our superintendent.
Thank you.
Joy,
Thank
the
you.
floor is yours.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you all for really attending and doing everything possible to understand the data, and thank you to Jill. This was not easy to try to put this together, and she really put a lot of effort into it, and she did a great job. Yeah, I got her a cookie and a bottle of water.
I commend you for your
Yeah,
ability
absolutely.
to communicate it to
I
non...
hope I did clearly, because I really did want it to make it manageable and informative and transparent.
Yeah.
So, and it's always it's a strange balancing act of trying to give you as much as possible and not...
And by the way, when she had the original one that was 53 slides, I was like, go back. So, this is the cut version, by the way, just so you know.
I think too, just kudos to being able to, this kind of thing is really hard to present to a group of stakeholders because you have to sort of present, here's what the system looks like, and here's what our data looks like. And if there are sort of discrepancies there, how to explain it without making it sound like excuse-making.
Right.
That's one of the things that's really hard about this kind of information.
Absolutely.
Is you sort of need to present it, and you need to give the context for it without making it sound like, oh, it doesn't matter, or oh, we're making excuses, and so you did a great job. You did a great job with
Yep, no, she did. She did an excellent job. So I thought you might like to hear that we have lights on our football field, Sirico Field. They work. We hit the switch and they came on. It was wonderful. It was incredibly cold that day. I was
And she turned
very
it on from her
underdressed.
phone.
Yes, she did. She turned it on from her phone from the app, which was very cool. So we had the ceremony.
turn them on now.
And it was, yeah, be careful, she might flip it. We had the ceremony. It was wonderful. Everybody was really excited. We recognized everybody that was there. Jason was there, Eric was there, we had a great night, Mike
Mike
was
and
there.
Chris.
Mike was there, Chris was there. It was really exciting, and it was just wonderful to actually have the whole thing come to fruition. So I just wanted to let you know, we have done it. It is done, it is paid for. Right now, I'm working with Martha to just sort of finish up the thank you list, because there's lots of little pieces, so we're still kind of working those pieces out, but I will send a very nice thank you. I just want to make sure I can give them what they may need for tax purposes, so I need to make sure I have all the correct information and where to send it to. Also, just for fun, Saturday, you might have heard, we're expecting a nor'easter, so one of the games that was scheduled to play on Saturday in another district, because of the weather, they can't play. So we're hosting Friday night under the lights in our district, so already we gained an extra game because we have them. So the students are happy. There were a lot of parents there that really went out of their way to come up to thank us. I think all of us received lots of thank yous. So it really did mean a lot to the community. I know it was a struggle for all of us, but we made it happen, and it's just really nice to be successful and to feel like we did it. Hey, Jim, do you think we could maybe move that?
I can.
Thank you.
And just to tag on to what Joy's saying, I was going to put this under chairman's report, but it makes sense now. This was my first football game at the lake. I have no children at the middle school or high school level. This was bought specifically for that evening. My little girls bought me my first Silver Lake Lakers sweatshirt, and I just want to publicly, one last time, thank Ollie DiMacedo for his heart and soul in leading the charge. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be where we are today, and that football game wouldn't have occurred, neither would this one on Friday evening. So, Ollie, thank you very much from the bottom of our heart for working with us and for rallying the community support for our students here at Silver Lake.
Absolutely. Thank you. So you all have a lovely coral pink. I'm not sure what the color is exactly, but it matches the calendar. Lisa likes to color code things, everything. What color is it? Salmon. All right. Michaela says salmon, so she's wouldn't like the right. Salmon? All right, so salmon it is. So you have a lovely salmon enrollment chart. So I'm going to ask you to look at this side first, which is our enrollment through all the districts. And what I wanted you to notice is we are seeing a decrease in enrollment. And it isn't just about charter schools. I know sometimes people are like, oh, it's all the charter schools, it's the charter schools. We are actually just seeing a decrease in enrollment. So currently at the middle school, we have 514 students. So we have 250 in grade 7, 264 in grade 8. That is a pretty serious decline. At the high school, we currently have 1,130. What I particularly want you to notice is only in grade 11 do we have...
Pulling that up for me. This is not the one I'm dancing in, no.
Are we gonna play that? Are we gonna play that one afterwards?
This is my debut acting, though. See if you can find that scene.
We just dropped the students.
Really? I'll have to look.
So she said that the football game at Pembroke is lots of fun, but the one that will be here, there's no fun. It's a serious.
Oh, yeah.
The big game.
Yes, the flag football game is friendly competition. The Thanksgiving Day game is not so friendly. But still, I mean, the seniors on both teams, it's
A lot of
their
them know
last
each other,
game.
too.
It's there's a little love. Thank you, Jim. Isn't that fun? Goosebumps?
Yeah.
You know, we've been talking about charter schools and we need to do things to make our school look better. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's like what you see, that the college is doing for their
Yeah.
recruiting. I know you're not doing this for recruiting.
Well,
but-
and Erica Christensen from PAC TV, I mean, she's been such a valuable asset for us to help build, these productions. And so, I want to give her a special thanks for pulling this all together for us and bringing our vision of what we wanted to the screen, so.
Might be a good thing to show at middle school.
Yeah.
We're talking about step up day.
Absolutely.
Yeah. In fact, they're in the auditorium, they show them something.
Right.
Some film in the auditorium, they used to in the auditorium.
Yeah, we can add this to it.
It's a
Great.
great idea.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
It's a little long-winded tonight.
Quite all right. Christina, you ready?
I can't top that, but.
Pretty exciting though, Christine.
Because I have exciting news to share.
You just gotta put it in video format.
I'll have to work on that.
Maybe a dinosaur costume.
We've got a few you can borrow.
Maybe I could be like a fairy princess. I could do that someday. I mean, the dinosaur, I have to think about that.
I'll get you some wings.
All right, thank you. All right, now to the really exciting news, actually, Michaela. In your package tonight, you do have a financial at the beginning of the year, so I think we have too many events that are causing concern for us. I think I had mentioned last month that right now, a lot of our encumbrances are based on last year's actual activity, unless we have some other information that could help us, like there's an increase in a rate increase or things like that, or a contract. So we're trying to account for all those items that we possibly can. Just a few items that are starting to bump right now. On page 1 of the detail, very top, it's travel account for MASs and MASC. We've had a lot of activity this year. That's a good thing. So lots of information come back to us, but that's one of the accounts that right now is having a deficit. Another area that just broadly I wanted to bring to your attention again is the utility accounts, where telephone is one we've struggled with, and our technology director right now is working diligently with Verizon to resolve that so that it will be taken care of. There were just some issues that came up with the way they were billing and the lines they were billing for, but I believe it's near getting resolved. Once I start to see the savings, I will reflect it. Right now, it's as of what we saw last year. Another area I wanted to just bring to your attention is page 4 of the detail on the bottom under the insurance section. We do have a deficit in our workers' compensation account. I had built in a slight increase based on last year's rates that we paid. But what happens when I deal with these people is that, and not that to come out in a good way, we pay early. Well, I didn't mean for it to sound negative. I didn't mean that. We pay early to take advantage of the early payment savings that they have. And there's a discount that we're allotted. The discount used to be higher, and that's one of the areas. They haven't increased their insurance rates, but they've decreased the incentive to pay early. So that's kind of where that happened. But the good thing is workers' comp, we pay once a year for our policy, and that year it's based on last year's activity. If anything, once we have our workers' comp audit, we actually usually get a small refund. So if that does happen, we will see that, and that will be applied to this account. Most of the other smaller deficits that you will see in the financial are really because we're trying to clarify our financial. Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is always updating the way they want information from you, how they want it organized. So we try to make those changes as we become aware of them. So that may not necessarily be in sync with when we budget, how we budgeted. So there are some areas where we've tried to work on some additional detailed information. So you'll see in some of those areas like technology, professional development, where we're having some small deficits, but the category as a whole is still okay. And the other thing I wanted to mention too is the warrants that are here tonight. I wasn't expecting to bring any tonight because I've been having them signed. The members that have been appointed by the school committee have come in to sign for us.
Have a class over 300, and if you go along that bottom column and you look at all the grades, you will see that there are no classes of 300 coming up. All the classes are in the 260s, 270 range, and we have another one coming up that's 242. So we are definitely seeing a decline in enrollment. We are looking at that. We're looking at the implications that that will have on us in terms of our budget and in terms of what our needs are. But it is something that within all the buildings, there is currently a decline. In Halifax Elementary School right now, they're up around 608. They are seeing sort of an increase in Halifax. It's been ranging around that 600 number. Dennett is down to 199. just under 200 K to 6. My little slice of heaven over there. And in Kingston, we're at 1,040. And again, looking at the numbers, when you go across, you can really see some of the impacts of what is happening. So as we're moving forward, it will be changing sort of some of our options, some of what can be offered, some of what may be happening, just because of the real numbers. So again, charter schools are a piece of this, but they are not the only piece. There's actually a decline in the towns. So I just wanted you to sort of be aware of that. Anybody have any questions on that side?
What are the SC columns?
Oh, I'm sorry. SC is school choice, so the town of Dennett is the only building that offers school choice, and they accepted school choice. We had a particularly small class, and we have 5 students that are currently grade 4 that started in kindergarten with us, and it has worked well. So that is something that, we may want to think about for the middle school next year, is whether or not we want to offer school choice.
Oh my God, Joy.
My favorite, well, I'm just saying, it's an option.
She knows that I'm going to
He is
vehemently
extremely
oppose that.
against
Even
school
though
choice.
I'm from Plimpton that does have school choice, it was for a very particular reason.
Right, and I'm not saying it's the thing to do
I know.
at all,
You
but
knew-
I'm
you
just
knew I
saying.
was gonna react to that. I'm
I did,
sorry.
I was going to try to cover you, but I think that's appropriate.
I respect and adore you, but I had to, I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm not saying, but, again, I believe my role is to give you all the options. It is an option, and some schools have been very successful with it. I'm not saying it's the right thing for Silver Lake, and as you offer school choice, as the grades get higher, you're getting a different reason for people choosing different schools. And some of it may be good reasons, but not all of them would be. It would be a very different experience. It is an option. I think it's my job just to let you know the options. I'm not saying I endorse it or I think it's a good idea, but it is an option. Okay, flip the page over.
I was going to say, I just have a
Eric has a
quick question.
Sure.
It's probably more of a statement than a question, but everybody should keep in mind, this does affect our budget down the road because, if you look at the numbers now, we get state aid based on a
Exactly.
full-time body, and our fixed costs stay the same, our variable costs could potentially stay the same, but they won't come down. Right, there's economies of scale, and we'll definitely lose money, so the cost per student is going to go up
Exactly.
over that time, and you're going to get less state aid, so it's going to be
Exactly.
more money coming from the towns, unless there's cost savings to be found either through school choice.
You get
We're opening up a charter school right here.
$5,000 per student, which is less than we currently spend on our own students.
Right,
It's not
right,
like someone who tuitions into one of our programs. It's a totally different
Absolutely.
animal.
I was actually just giving you
I know.
Sometimes it's just fun to teach
The
them.
unfortunate thing is, I also know school districts who become addicted to that money,
Yeah.
and now they can't withdraw from school choice.
Right.
And you can't withdraw
Because
from
they-
school choice.
Once they're in your district, you have to let them finish the district. So the Plimpton
They keep
students are
opening
ours
new-
K to
new-
6.
Yeah.
Once they're done in Plimpton, they're gone. They can't come to Silver
And we
Lake.
gave school choice to the siblings of those families who came to us in the time of need,
Yeah.
out of respect for what they did for us. But we purposely kept the money from school choice out of our operation budget, so we would not become addicted to
Yeah.
that revenue
Yeah.
stream, and we could walk away from it when it didn't make sense for
Yeah.
our town anymore. That took a lot of discipline, that took foresight of 3 chairs back
Yeah.
to come up with that resolute stance.
Yeah.
And we're lucky, and we'll walk away from it with the benefit of having school choice,
Right.
hopefully without any of the downside.
Yeah.
It's dangerous, though.
So I just have a question on the numbers. So, I mean, I think I saw some of these numbers in the spring, too. But I mean, it's a pretty marked difference. I mean,
Absolutely.
like, kind of abruptly. I mean, I think last year's class was 330, 320.
Well,
Big. I don't know what the year before that
the
was.
graduating class,
Yeah, I
yes.
don't know what the year before that was, or the
It
year
was-
before, but I mean, these are markedly different.
The numbers have been declining.
We're
When
down
I
77 students at the high school.
Right. When I started, we had more class sizes of 300. That was more common.
norm.
The district size has really decreased. We were closer to 4,000 when I started 13 years ago. Halifax was around 700 when I started. I mean, it's been a pretty huge decline.
So just my quick question then is, and I don't need a totally long-winded answer, but because I'm just curious, I think some of our new members may be curious too, is that, so what is your process, or what do you as administration go through to think about what's that demographic change? How does it impact, how do we plan for it? Because I mean, from last year to this year, 77, I mean, that's like 2 whole classrooms, really, or 3 whole classrooms at some grade level, right? So if we were just still talking about having homerooms, I mean, that's 3 whole homerooms just kind of gone. So how do you just do that analysis? How do you figure out what resources are going to have to change?
Well, Jim and I are spending lots of quality time together.
So Joy and I have been looking at these numbers probably for 3 or 4 years now,
Yep.
to be honest with you. It's not a new conversation for her and I. And as of, I want to say 2.5 years ago, I had put together a couple of different plans for Joy and I to look at so that we could use what we see as to what we can do with our current teaching staff. How do we
But we do have a couple of items that have come up. One is our debt payment. November 15th, our debt payment is due. We'd like to do it early just in case anything goes wrong. So we have it all set, it's ready to go, we can work on any kinks that may develop. And when we have the warrant signed, we do not have all that information yet. We do not have the invoices. We do have them now. The other warrant that you're seeing is for the NEASC visit that Michaela talked about. The participants that come to visit us, it is the expectations that any reimbursements would happen on their last day, which is tomorrow. So we have that warrant all set for them so that we can take care of that tomorrow when their visit concludes.
Thank you.
And then we have 2 payroll warrants. So thank you for signing. If you have any questions, please let me know.
And I believe the warrants are circulating the table. If they happen to get stuck at any point, could we continue to move them forward around the table?
I'm just going to do that when it comes up later on.
Okay. Any questions for Christine on the financial report? All right, moving on to our assistant superintendent, Jill.
So Jim, if you don't mind helping me, thank you.
No, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're going to get you set up with a presentation so you can look at the results on the big screen as well, but you also have the slides in your packet. Tonight I'm going to provide you with an overview of our MCAS results for Silver Lake. And if you recall last year, I provided you with an introductory.
We don't have the slides.
We don't have the
We don't
slides.
have
I
the
just
slides.
realized the slides aren't in here.
Okay. So we'll have them on screen and we can send you.
Yeah, we'll send a
Slides.
PDF to everyone.
Okay.
How did they print it?
I don't know. These things happen.
We need
okay.
Lisa.
We'll roll.
I need Lisa. Where's Lisa?
Blame it on Lisa. But I did get to see these Monday.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So it'll look similar. There'll be some new things to
Right.
keep you interested.
Printed.
So last year I provided you with some introductory information, and I'm going to see, Jim, I may be able to advance this with this.
I just gotta plug it in.
Oh, okay. Oh, this guy.
Yeah.
There you go. Okay. And so we really, I even spoke with Joy because there's so much data now that could be shared and so much data that can't be shared because it's at the student level. And wanted to provide you with something that was reasonable and informative, and trying to balance what should go in a presentation like this, especially where there are so many new features as well. So there's also that element that we're trying to balance. And we, after discussing with Joy, we talked about some things, but obviously I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have. This is new to us, and I have been working with the administrators on the data as it became available to us and beginning to talk about what it may or may not mean. This is regarding the next generation changes. This will be our second year testing with this new system in the middle school. And at the high school, we're still using the legacy MCAS, but even with the legacy MCAS, there are some new accountability features that we should discuss and that you should be aware of. The data for the next generation MCAS should not be compared with the legacy MCAS data. It's really important that we not do that because they're 2 different tests, they're different systems for measuring, and so it's really important that we realize that we're working off of a comparison to last year's data at the middle school level in particular. and a new accountability system with a lot of new features that we're beginning to figure out how those will work and play into our efforts to help all children learn and grow. So I wanted to give you some, oh, it's me. Oh, it worked, yay. Thank you.
Now I'll sit.
Yeah, we're good now. So I wanted to give you some context for the middle school results. Overall, in the state, 31% of schools were categorized as meeting the targets. 53% of schools were categorized as partially meeting targets. 14% of schools were categorized as in need of focused targeted support, and 2% were categorized as in need of broad comprehensive support. In addition, each school is assigned a percentile. And at the middle school, we're going to parse them out because it's different for the two schools. So I apologize, but I have to explain two different ways of doing this. At the middle school, they were ranked at the 66th percentile, and they're being compared against all the students who took the Next Generation MCAS test. So we're not just looking at middle schools now, we're also looking at the elementary schools. And we anticipate that when the high school begins to take the Next Generation test, that they too will be in that percentile figure. So years ago, we were familiar with comparing just, let's say, the elementary schools of the same grade span. The idea is that all Next Generation's schools will be part of this percentile in the future. So the middle school was placed in the 66th percentile, meaning that they're performing better than 66% of the schools that took that test. And then at the high school, they were categorized at the 51st percentile. They, however, are being compared to high schools that took the legacy MCAS. So there's a difference there. And that may account for some changes, not only this year, but next year as more schools are added to the percentile rating. Oops, wrong way, sorry. So this chart you have seen before, or at least an introduction to it last year. It wasn't as detailed. It summarizes the new accountability indicators, and they are achievement, student growth, high school completion, English language proficiency, and additional indicators. For non-high schools, that second column, you'll notice that high school completion is not an indicator there. You'll notice that chronic absenteeism is calculated as 10% or more of students missing 10% or more of their days in membership.
And Jill?
Yes.
Just for clarification on accountability standards, that's for excused and unexcused absences?
Yes, yes. And so we have also talked about how students who are receiving tutoring, home hospitalization tutoring, for example, they can be coded differently, but not all students qualify for home hospital tutoring. It also doesn't include students who have been, let's say, who are out of school suspended. So those are the types of things that will need to be considered and may influence our future policies. And in fact, we're noticing that we need to consider things like more in-school suspension for certain infractions and things of that nature to make sure that students are still learning. But those are some bigger, these are ways that a standardized test can actually affect things like policy. High school and districts. You'll notice that there are more indicators here. I also want to point out for English language proficiency, if we had 20 or more students in this category, this would be part of our calculation. At this time, we do not have 20 students or more. That can change, and it may be an indicator in the future, just so that you're aware of that. Again, for their additional indicators, they have advanced coursework, as well as chronic absenteeism. So that's another consideration when we begin to look at what types of courses are available to our students in terms of advanced placement, international baccalaureate, dual enrollment courses, and other rigorous courses. How can we raise the level of rigor for more of our students and encourage them to take challenging courses? Because that's part of the expectation here with the indicators. The high school achievement, when we talk about the weighting of categories, and I'll mention this again, but achievement for the high school will be both achievement on the MCAS as well as high school completion. Those two items together factor in to create a 3-to-1 ratio with growth. Okay, but it will be more visual for you when I get to that slide. So here is a non-high school, and in this case, we're talking about the middle school. And here is the weighting of the indicators. So achievement is at 67.5%, and student growth is at 22.5%, whereas chronic absenteeism is weighted 10%. And I have eliminated the column with the ELL because we didn't have enough students in this category for this year. So to simplify matters, I also wanted to emphasize the 3-to-1 ratio that we had spoken about before. The high school, you see achievement is at 47.5%, student growth is at 22.5%, and you say, well, wait a minute, that's not a 3-to-1 ratio. But if you add in the 20% for high school completion indicators, such as the 4-year cohort graduation rate, the extended graduation rate, and the annual dropout rate, the points that we receive for those are considered 20% and are considered part of high school achievement. And then 10% for chronic absenteeism, and the percentage of our students who are taking advanced coursework. And again, I apologize, but there are a lot of criteria, there are a lot of indicators that go into this point system. So this is the simplest way to kind of summarize all of these indicators. There is an increased focus on raising the performance of each school's lowest performing students. So you'll see that the state sets targets for us for each of the indicators listed here. And we have indicators for all students, and then we have indicators for the lowest 25% on the far right. Regardless of achievement, schools must focus on the lowest 25%. And these students, the lowest 25%, are made up of students who are reported in the October SIMS for two consecutive years in the district in order to be counted in this group. That they've been identified using their combined ELA and math scores, scaled scores from the previous year. And they're not first year English language learner acquisition students, but we don't need to worry about that yet because we're not going to talk about that indicator tonight. So I'm sorry, I can't help it. I don't mean to add extra things that we don't really need to get into. For all students, you'll see that the achievement for ELA Math and Science, ELA Math Growth, you have the graduation indicators listed here, the English Language Learner Progress, which we do not have enough of at the high school level this year, chronic absenteeism, and then advanced coursework at the high school only. So certain factors are at the high school only. The lowest 25%, what we're talking about is ELA Math and Science Achievement, ELA Growth, Math Growth, and chronic absenteeism. So those are the indicators that the state looks at, and they set a target for us. And they award us points based upon whether or not we declined, no change, improved, met the target, or exceeded the target. So our scale is from 0 to 4. And we are given a number of points based upon whether or not where we stand on this scale in terms of the target that the state set for us. And that was based on trends and what the state considers to be reasonable. Based upon our scores or our growth, for example, last year, and what they consider to be a reasonable expectation for improvement for the following year. So it's about continuous improvement as well. So I joked before that this is going to become like the Bill Belichick era of MCAS data, and my response will be to you that we need to improve in all facets of the game, and then that's it. I don't take any other questions.
Great analogy.
You have to wear a sweatshirt when you
Do we have a hoodie for her?
Yes. You're smiling too much, though.
Yeah. So, but really, the
Too much
reality.
Wish you were on camera for that.
Can't pull it off. Too cute. She's too cute.
So, just to be aware of kind of the change in what we're going to be looking at and the data and in terms of what our focus areas may become.
Can I add one thing, Jill?
Yes.
Just one of the things I think that's important to keep in mind is that a lot of these MCAS targets at the middle school in particular are just, like you said, based on last year's
Yes.
MCAS, because we only have 2 years of MCAS data. And so doing that sort of assumes that last year was a typical year. And so like what's happened with schools is if schools had good years, the targets are high, if schools had lower years, the targets are low, and so, target setting based on 1 year is kind of, well, I don't want to say ridiculous, but, you just have to sort of understand that that's
It's
what they've
limited.
done. It's
There's
limited, yeah. So it-
definitely limitations to what, we don't want to jump to any wild conclusions. We want to look at them, we want to begin to learn, we want to begin to examine what some of these indicators may mean for us. It's important for us to take them seriously, but at the same time, we don't want to be reactionary and do things that could actually be, not in the best interest of our students, because we overreacted to a one-year issue.
I think it's important, being on the elementary school committee for the past 12 or 13 years, we had at one grade level, one particular subject where we continuously, year over year, had an issue, and those test results pointed that out. We then made investments in software and curriculum to try to correct that issue, because we were very different from the other towns' results and the states. All our other grades seemed to be kind of on cue, but because of this, we did identify an issue that we needed to fix, and we fixed, and we're still working on it, but it's definitely improved.
Absolutely.
So I think it's still valuable, but you do need to see the trend over multiple
Right,
years.
that was probably a bunch of years, right?
It was,
Yeah.
it was, yeah.
So is that one class moving through that had the issue? Or
Every
is it
year.
like grade
Yeah.
4 always had that
It
issue
was
with that
grade
test?
4 every year, so it was curriculum. Yeah, and it wasn't just one teacher, I mean, it was, it was a curriculum issue. You may be able to talk more to it, but I mean, we did identify the systemic issue, and we've spent a lot of, money and resources to address it. And it went on for years.
But I think the
It's got better.
summation of what Laura brought up and what Jill is clearly illustrating is our data pool is very shallow right now, and we can't oversteer based on a single year's worth of data.
So, just a follow-up question. On the testing itself, how much has the test changed as it's a new test and they were testing the test?
Significantly, and the grading system and the rigor also was adjusted.
So basically, we gave them data points and the pool of data is even shallower than...
And I think there was confusion in going to a computer-based test. You were talking about how some of the younger kids were taking tests, but they didn't realize that the boxes could expand. So they were just writing shorter answers, and so there was that.
So an actual test of the test itself on the computer.
And that skews.
A further look behind the curtain, Gordon, when the MCAS originally came out, 1.0, the original version, there were some major issues with the scoring, especially once it was tied to graduation rates. Within a year of a few towns saying that they were going to file class action legal challenges to the MCAS, all of a sudden scores started creeping up. So we finally arrived at a point where 240 used to be the 50%, the middle of the bell curve. That was the difference between proficient and needs improvement. You saw that bell curve move closer to 260, which was between advanced and proficient. With the new state assessment, we've seen the reversion back to the 50% with that bell curve in a lot of places in the state. They say they didn't do it on purpose, but it's kind of ironic that here we are with a new accountability system with a high stakes test, and we're back to half of the state seems to be on one side of the bell curve and half the state seems to be on the other side of the bell curve. And there's already challenges. Like Eric was bringing up, some socioeconomically disadvantaged cities that kids don't have access to computers at home, didn't understand how to access the online version of the test, and the scores reflected that.
So it's not actually a reflection on their knowledge more?
Not
of their-
100%. There's questions of the validity of the testing methodology, not only the depth of the pool, but how valuable the data actually is. So luckily for us, we have a team of people who can dig through all of the information and find the valuable information that's there, and we can make meaningful use of that information with our students.
And that's what we do. We look for potential gaps, standards that we may not be spending enough time on, or we think we may not be spending enough time on, or different ways to approach something if it hasn't been successful with us in terms of students overall. We look at individual students, and we talk about how we can provide interventions or supports for them. So we dig a lot deeper than what gets presented tonight in terms of not only looking at our curriculum and our strategies and the ways that we teach and learn, but also in terms of individually for students, helping them.
So just one more question. Do we correlate the data that the kids are getting from their grades in the class to what we're seeing as a result for what they're scoring here? Because if a kid's getting an A in class doing all the work and getting a lower score than you'd anticipate on the test, are we tracking that?
So this state now has a system called the Early Warning Indicator System, EWIS, where they're pulling from our data that we send to the state, and they've basically looked at certain indicators, like for example, if a child has failed a course in 9th grade, for example, and there's a correlation with not graduating on time, or more likely to drop out, for lack of a better way to express this. And so certain, that data is collected and is available now to us, where we can see certain students who may be classified as high risk, so that we can provide interventions even in elementary school, obviously not based on their 9th grade scores, but the state does collect and has begun to make that data available to us. Which is wonderful. One of the difficulties is that there's so much data, is determining, what data to look at, what will be the most valuable for us, and it is new to us. So I suspect that we will become better at, what pieces of data are most helpful to us in the areas that we need improvement.
I'll say just to Gordon's question, so that we do sit there with our teachers by department, looking at the math data, for instance, and we do predictions. Who do you think scored in the accelerated? And we talk about that, and then we reveal the math data with our teachers in that conversation as to who was in accelerated, what grades did they get in the class. And if we see a pattern emerge, like a bunch of students got A's in class but were barely proficient, we talk to those teachers about that pattern that's emerging in their accelerated math class. So the conversations that you're asking do happen with our teachers in department, with their coordinators.
Just if I could ask, isn't there a time lag though? I mean, you take the MCAS in the spring and you don't hear about this until
It's not
November, so-
initiated to pinpoint a student that's currently in their class. It's initiated for our own instruction and enhance our curriculum instruction through the year.
Right. And the other thing, and I know it's obvious, but this is one point in time. This is, it could be that their dog died the day before and the child's really upset and didn't do well on the test, or something's going on in their home. So and also some children don't test well, where the teacher knows how to help them pass the test successfully, where on the computer, they're sitting there, they have to take the test, they might not be on an IEP, they might not have accommodations, but testing might bring out a lot of anxiety for them. So, I think it's valuable, but to me it's not the be all end all. It does not represent what Silver Lake is. Video is a lot closer to what I think Silver Lake is. I do think it's very valuable, but, again, it is a point in time, it is a piece of data. It doesn't define who our students are.
Snapshot, right?
Yeah. And it's a little blurry snapshot. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So this slide here is a look at our ELA test for the middle school, and it's a comparison with the school and the state. And our school is at 62% exceeding or meeting expectations, as compared to the state at 51% exceeding or meeting expectations. So I'm going to start with some familiar pieces of data first for the middle school. And this is all that, though only 2 years of data comparison. It's a familiar piece of data. We're used to looking at this type of achievement comparison. Here you have last year's ELA at 70%, and this year we have ELA at 62% meeting and exceeding. Last year was 70% meeting or exceeding, but again, you only have that one single data point. Here is our math for all grades of the middle school, with 63% meeting or exceeding expectations, outperforming the state, which is at 47% meeting or exceeding. And for example, one of the things that Jim's team recently looked at, as they're looking at the data, they're looking at the Strand data to see if there are particular standards that were strong or less strong. And they noticed that the geometry and measurement area was an area that they're going to focus on and do more work with students. So that's the kind of information that we can gather that is very helpful to our classroom teachers and is helpful to all students, not just the lowest 25% that. This is math comparison, a very slight dip from last year, 67% meeting and exceeding expectations the year before, and 63% meeting or exceeding expectations this year, this past tested year. A very familiar chart for you because this is the legacy MCAS. And here you see the school outperforming. This is grade 8 students only, just to keep that in mind. 52% scoring advanced proficient. Notice the change in terminology as compared to the state at only 35% advanced proficient. This slide has been changed. I lost my numbers. But we have 52% at the school level. Right. Oh no, I'm looking at the 4-year comparison. Right?
Yes.
Okay, so I already did the...
Guess you did that one.
Yeah, sorry, I apologize. Here is the 4-year comparison that I wanted to take a look at. Here we have the 52% this year in 2018 as advanced and proficient. You see a slight decline, but relatively little change over time. And again, that's not uncharacteristic for the state. In certain grade levels, there were dips on certain tests. So we can also look at growth, which is important to us. We want to make sure that our students are achieving and now it's an average SGP. We're looking at the mean when we talk about accountability, as opposed to in the past we used to look at median, but we'll talk about that more in a minute. Our target is 50 for average student growth, and to determine growth, what they do is they take a student who scored, had a particular score last year, and they look at all of the students who scored similarly last year, and they look at how they did on the following test in comparison. And in that cohort, they then determine what constitutes growth and whether or not that student fared more or less growth in comparison to people who scored similarly the previous year. So that's kind of a simplistic way of trying to describe how growth is calculated. Here you can see we have really strong growth in grade 7 ELA, grade 7 mathematics, grade 8 English language arts, and we're just below the target in grade 8 mathematics. So to meet the target, you score between 50 to 59 in order to achieve points, which we'll talk about in a minute. And if you exceed, you receive 4 points on the accountability scale. In order to get exceeding expectations, you have to have 60 or higher, exceeding the target, I should say. This is what the new accountability report looks like. This is the middle school. And so here on the left-hand side, you see all the indicators listed. And for when there is a category that's being scored, you will see numbers from 0 to 4. And then at the bottom, you will see the percentage of accountability indicators that were met. In this case, the middle school met 40%. They earned 40% of their possible points, and they were classified as partially meeting targets. In order to be classified as meeting targets, the middle school must earn 75% of the points. And so you can see on the left-hand side are all students and the points that we received for all students, and we received strong scores for growth, yet we received 0 points for achievement in those areas because in all of those areas there was a decline. Whereas in the lowest performing, you can see that we received, once again, high scores for growth and ELA and mathematics, and even in some achievement categories, but nonetheless, we're at 40% of the total possible points we could have received.
And this really goes back to the whole, well, what was the target to begin with question.
Right.
Since we didn't have anything to really base the targets on, the state came up with targets. So I think it looks pretty harsh to say 0 decline, but you have to look at, well, what was the target?
Right.
And was it reasonable?
So here's an ELA point detail sample. And so let's just take all students as an example here. In 2017, the achievement was 508.2 for all students, and what they achieved in 2018 was 505.8, which was a 2.4 decline. And the target they set for us was 509.9. That's what they considered reasonable to expect. And so for that reason, we're listed as a decline.
And remind me, because I meant to ask this Monday when I watched this slide, sure. But where did they come up with their targets? Is that again, the 2018 target of 509.9? Where does that come from?
They come, well, it's...
I mean, is it basically every year they're saying you need to go up, up, up? So every year it's just kids have to be getting smarter?
So for this year, it's just for 1 year, but they do expect that they're going to give us more, I guess, a longer range target. And my belief is that yes, that we're looking for continuous improvement. We need to improve in all facets of the game.
But it's not just improving that kid as he's moving through, but the next group needs to do better than the
Yes.
prior group, which is, again,
Apples and oranges.
right.
Gordon?
Do the teachers, so you have a curriculum that you go through, and this test is going to test that knowledge of the curriculum.
Not exactly.
Well, our curriculum should be aligned with the standards, and so we...
But so if the kids are taking the test in March?
May.
March
and May.
It depends on which test,
It's
but
May
in the
now.
spring.
It used to start earlier when we had the legacy, but now that it's online, they started in April through May.
So is there an input to say how much of the curriculum that the student has been taught, to say, we covered 3 weeks of this section of the curriculum, and the student should be proficient in this section of the curriculum, and you're scoring against that? Or is it just, here's the test, there's no input to say how much of class time the students actually had on that? Because otherwise it doesn't make any data point valuable
You're
if you
trying to
have
understand
no
this,
idea.
Gordon. I really thought you knew better.
No, but this is a big
Gordon,
waste
for
of time.
example, the 10th grade math curriculum frameworks put out by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education gives you certain things that all 10th grade math students in Massachusetts who are grade level should be exposed to by June. However, they don't say, make sure you cover all of these ones by MCAS testing, and then you can take care of the rest of them after MCAS testing. So it's a crapshoot. You might get through 83% of your curriculum prior to MCAS testing, or you can try and jam all of that curriculum into a shorter duration and not hit the quality of education that you'd really want to give to these students in hopes to get all of the curriculum in time.
Yeah.
Then you backfill.
Exactly. The other piece that happens, we were talking to, where were we? Where was I? I was talking to
They don't give the
math
guidance
teacher.
you're looking for.
Yeah, they were saying that they had felt that the year before they hadn't focused enough on fractions. And so they really put a lot of effort into fractions because it was a high percentage of the test. The next year, it wasn't the same percentage of the test. So it's not like teachers aren't doing their job, and it isn't that we're not looking at the data, but it keeps moving. You know, what the test is testing moves. So it's difficult to know really what to focus on. So really, in my mind, what we need to teach our children is how to think, because every piece of knowledge can't be there. We can't teach them every single type of problem. They have to have the concepts of how to solve the problems, how to write, how to do the math, how to do a science experiment, because they might not have had that exact piece by the time the test comes. So that's why you can't teach to the test. I mean, that's just such, and besides, I would be devastated if that's what our district was
But
known
wouldn't
for.
the real value be testing what the kids have been exposed to? Wouldn't the real value be to say that my math teacher covered sections 1 through 7 of the curriculum, we didn't get to 8 through 10, and the test actually
That would
picks for that student? I mean, the availability of the technology is there.
Right.
You enter in the information, and you're testing the knowledge of the student over how much exposure they've had in the classroom to that subject.
So the theory behind standards is, and it's theory, and here's the theory behind standards, is that yes, but if we don't create standards for students, then some students never get exposed to certain things because people pick and choose what they're going to focus on, and it creates inequity. And so in some states or in some parts of the states, and this is the whole reasoning behind the standards movement, is to kind of make sure that everyone has that kind of equity of opportunity to be exposed to high quality, rigorous education, regardless of what town they live in, and holding school districts accountable to make sure that they incorporate these standards into what they're teaching. Now that's the theory behind the standards. And standards have done some good things, but standards also fall short in these areas. And then also you have the reactionary changes that sometimes these tests can bring about that can do damage to school districts. So when MCAS first came out, there were reactionary movements where people were, you know, taking away music or art because they felt like they had to put all their eggs in the English and math basket, and they wanted to devote their limited budgets to that. And it had unintended consequences. And so I think one of the things that we can do is to use the data to our advantage to help children learn and grow, but to keep it in its context and not be reactionary or do things that we know to be counterintuitive to what are good for our children.
And Gordon, as a newer member to this committee, we have taken a position as the Silver Lake Regional School Committee to call for a moratorium on high-stakes testing to address some of the exact issues that you've brought to the table tonight.
Thank you. But
Thanks, I'll be quiet now.
They're great questions.
Yeah, they are. They're very good questions.
To teach 10th grade math and 9th grade or math sciences.
So if we want to take a look at another one, just to
Can
kind
I
of get
just
used
ask
to.
one, can I just piggyback on Eric's question on the target, right?
Yeah.
So you said that they just set the target. Do they even have a conversation with the administration about the target or anything?
We found out what our target was when we were able to see our results.
The targets were the target increment was the same for every school district. So like that, the difference between 2017 and 2018 was 1.7 for math or ELA. So if you look at any other school's data for this, that increment is the same.
Percentage or actual points?
No, it's points.
Points.
And they did it based on, like, they did an analysis of like sort of what would be an expected amount of improvement in a year based on the old MCAS data, because again, that's all they have. And then they came up with sort of what would the equivalent be. I think the idea was they just said, well, we want everybody to improve a little bit. And so this little bit is 1.7, so that's what it is. There's a whole paper about it, but that's pretty much what the paper says.
Great summary, thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you for sparing us.
She read the white paper.
So let's take a look at math. Just another example to get us used to and familiar with what some of this data means. If you look at...
Jill?
Yes.
Jim would just like to.
I did. I just want to say to Laura's
Sorry,
point
Joe.
and the questions they're asking, and that they did just take a baseline based on the first year. And one of the things that we noticed is that, like for ELA, our biggest drop in achievement scores was our 7th grade ELA achievement scores, and yet our student growth for our 7th grade ELA was above 60, which is a high growth. So that's why when Laura says you don't jump on an achievement score, because you're comparing one achievement score to a whole different group of students, you really have to look at all the indicators. So when you have a 61 student growth for 7th grade ELA, and yet that's your biggest achievement dip, so so you can't just say, oh, that baseline is the school's baseline, which is to Laura's point that she had already made, but I just wanted to say that.
So, just one more question. The testing isn't really saying, like, here's the student in September, baseline test, here you are in January, check out that, here you are at the end of the year, see where you are.
No, because...
So it doesn't really?
No, so for instance,
That's what
Gordon,
schools do, but that's not what the state does.
for instance, when they come in, you can look at last year's 6th grade ELA scores, for instance, right? So the baseline of last year, when they were coming in, was 10 points below the baseline of the students coming in the year prior. And yet we're comparing them as if they had the same baseline coming in. Student growth is the mark they're trying to say is like what they grow over the year, and that's what they're trying to use student growth for. But achievement really is comparing one group of students to another group of students who aren't coming in at the same.
But the achievement is not really based on the same testing, because you could score a section of the curriculum stronger in a test from year to year.
Correct.
Absolutely.
So those of us,
Like spending money on this?
I know. Every test has leveled out, though. The blueprint is the same.
It's comparable, but as I said, I can't remember, it must have been at a recent meeting that I was talking to, and they were specifically saying that they had done this extra focus. The year before, there had been a higher focus on fractions, and so they really put all their eggs in the fraction basket, and that wasn't,
right, there's two criteria that most testing goes through at the national level. It's called norm referencing and validating. And because they say that we have a standardized test that's cute, it's never been norm referenced and it's never been validated. So in essence, MCAS testing is an invalid assessment. And those have very technical definitions. But things like the California Achievement Test that some of us took when we were younger, that test was repeatable and predictable and could form patterns. MCAS, you can't do that with the data unless you play around with statistics.
It just doesn't.
The state is playing with statistics and then holding us to account for it.
But like publishing all this information to the public that has no background on this 3 months that I've been here, right? Are basing, oh, that school isn't, this goes to your argument on the charter schools.
Right.
Totally goes to that. It's a big waste.
And what really bothers me even more than that, Gordon, is that individual student who's getting their number sent to them based on a single day or a couple of days of testing that tells them that they're partially meeting expectations, and they work their tail off to get to that point, and they have amazing growth from one year to the next, but you're partially meeting expectations. And what does that really mean? And the parents can't even get access to the test to see where the child achieved and fell down.
So you can't view the test either?
Some of the test materials are made public and some are embargoed for future usage. So they won't release
questions.
They release sample questions, and they'll show you which items you got right or wrong, but you can't actually see every question.
But on the upside, if you score well enough on, I forget which, a couple of them, there are scholarships.
John, the
Abigail,
10th grade math and ELA.
And that's for a state school, you get free tuition, but remember tuition's like, what, $800 or to $1,200 a year? The rest is fees, but you get the tuition part off. And my daughter got it in math, so we save, I think, like $1,200 a year.
This just seems absolutely insane.
Yes, I get the same. Yeah.
Welcome to the team.
Welcome to education.
If you ever want to have a conversation, John Creed would love to talk to you about this. This was his very favorite time.
So basically, every member of the legislature should be taking this test every year to see what they score.
Most of them can't tell you what MCAS stands for.
So, On that note,
Jill's gonna need fairy wings.
Sorry, Jill.
I'm gonna go get you a cookie.
brighter news, let's look at our growth detail with ELA, non-high school in the middle school. You can see we are meeting our target in all areas, with some really high growth for all students, meeting target in all of our subgroups. These are the subgroups where we have 20 or more students. So, and then math. You can see here, thank you. The decline in our achievement scores resulted in 0 points, with the exception of our lowest performing, where we had a positive change of 2.7 points, meeting the target. Oh, I'm sorry, am I looking at the right one? Yes, I am. Okay.
And just for clarification, students with disabilities are only those on IEPs, not on 504 plans, correct, if I recall?
Here's chronic absenteeism for the middle school. Their rates in chronic absenteeism went up slightly, by 0.2%. Our target was 9.4. We were listed as no change. We received 1 point. And then you can see how it was broken out into other categories, subcategories. I'm sorry, I keep going the wrong way. So for the high school, we're going back to legacy MCAS, but we have a new accountability system and report that will look similar to the middle school's report when we get there. So here you see achievement for ELA with 94% of our students scoring advanced or proficient as compared to 91% advanced proficient at the state level. Here is the multi-year ELA data with very little fluctuation over the past few years, pretty steady in general. Here you see math achievement for the high school, 89% scoring advanced proficient as compared to 78% of the state scoring advanced proficient. And again, next year will be our first year taking the computer-based test on next generation MCAS for those students. So here is our multi-year math data over the past 4 years. Again, a decline this past year in our math department looking at, in our ELA department looking at areas. And again, the standards themselves were updated and there were some changes, and we have been working to incorporate them. In fact, we did some curriculum work over the summer in math, ELA, and even social studies began their work in science in terms of what the new standards were and whether or not we had incorporated them since the last changes were made to English, math, and science most recently. And now we have the release of the social studies frameworks, and our teachers are working on those changes.
One thing I think that's important to recognize about high school data is that high schools in particular, they only give the test 1 year. So like with a middle school, and even our middle school that's only 2 years, at least you're looking at multiple grades. So like if you have a particularly challenging graduating class in 7th grade, they're still there in 8th grade. And so that it sort of evens out, but with the high school, it's just 10th grade. So if that's the year, that's the school's data. So, just having one tested year makes it a little bit more likely to kind of go up and down because you don't have that equalizing effect with multiple grade levels.
You're taking MCAS more than just 10th grade?
Well, the science they do, but ELA and math, it's only 10th grade.
So
At science, they only take once.
Right.
If they pass.
Well, yes, if they pass.
Right.
But if there's only one, they only can take one.
They only have to take one and pass one.
So that graph that you just had up that showed from year to year is...
That's truly one cohort of kids, like 1 year. each year.
But that doesn't give you any data on whether or not they improve from the previous years because they have,
To that, we tend to look at the growth data.
but they're not taking that test, they're not taking a math test each. So they take,
No.
Only 10th grade.
So they look at it in the 8th grade, and they're taking that cohort of how they scored on the math and ELA and in the 8th grade, and then they compare it to their scores in the 10th grade with a similar cohort, and that's how they measure their growth.
You have solid mathematics MCAS testing, 3rd grade through 8th grade.
Okay.
Skips 9th and in 10th.
And 10th.
ELA is the same way, 3rd grade to 8th grade, skip 9th and 10th. Science is tested in 5th, 8th, and 10th grade. Some kids option to take it in 9th grade.
Our district all
Our
kids
district
take it
only
ninth.
does it in 9th grade?
Yep,
Okay.
unless they don't pass.
And if they don't pass it, they have the
They-
opportunity to
right. They
take
take
that
physics,
test
right.
or another test in 10th grade.
Right, and 10th grade again is graduation requirement, so they have to receive.
which aspect of the test is the graduation required, math and ELA?
Yes.
And
And
science?
Science, you have to
And
pass
science.
all.
And I believe a
Yes.
score of needs improvements
It has to be well, yep, there are numbers.
allows them to graduate with their diploma.
Yes.
So needs improvement, proficient, and advanced all qualify for graduation. Warning is the only one failure that would preclude a diploma.
So what do the students do that get a warning? Do they retake the test in
Yes.
11th grade?
Well, they retake it when, yes, in math and ELA in 11th grade. For science, they would take it, it's biology in 10th. They take physics in 9th. That's the MCAS test we take.
And if they pass that, then they don't have to do
They
biology.
do not have to do biology, yes, only if they fail physics.
Or if a student moves in from another state or
Yes.
district,
Right.
their sophomore, junior year, they would take bio or chem.
And how many students do we have currently that aren't graduating because they're not passing the MCAS?
Well, last year, we haven't had any recently, because we also in some cases are able to apply for waivers. And so in recent times, the MCAS has not been what's prohibited a student from graduating.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So we get those retests in. We have Title I tutoring available to our students if they don't pass. So there's a lot of resources that we invest into those students to make sure that that's not the reason they don't graduate.
And you have
Yeah.
summer resources too,
Right,
Yes.
yes.
which is great.
Yep. Yep.
So here is our science, which we stated was actually grade 9 physics. 83% scoring advanced proficient as compared to 75% of the state. So they take the grade 9 physics test and then our scores are reported with the 10th grade results. This is our science multi-year data, and you see a slight change from last year in the trend. What was interesting is that for the first time ever, I saw a median SGP listed for science. And they were listed at 55, median SGP. And did you see that too
I
this
did,
year?
yes.